Maru starts off as your typical turbo loser, crippled by social anxiety and a serious case of autism, but as the story unfolds, he transforms into the coldest, most emotionless Chad of all time. In a world where everyone has a single talent, his absolute menace breaks the system by devouring monsters to steal and stack their skills infinitely. Oh, and he's got a superior named Kang, a ripped badass girl whose abs you definitely shouldn't be thinking about licking. One might say Maru's got it easy, but in reality, odds are completely stacked against him. In just 1 year, monsters will rain from the sky, plunging the world into chaos, and it'll be up to him to stop it. But before all hell breaks loose, let's rewind a bit. The story begins in a restricted area in a camp in the middle of the forest. A guy's lying on the ground with blood on his shirt. In front of him, a bunch of people are dead. Desperate, he says that there's something inside this yellow dust. The outline of something approaches the guy, drawing a gigantic sword completely bathed in red with a few bells on the tip. The boy begs for help, but at that very moment, a strange creature leaps out of the bushes and grabs his foot. The guy is dragged into the smoke, leaving a trail behind. Sometime later, his body is found dead. A group of friends looks at him, commenting that he shouldn't have been wandering around there. The one with glasses complains that now they'll have to mark it as a casualty, while the one with black hair says that, judging by the footprints, they'll have to start working before it's too late. That's when the beautiful one hears the sound of water beside her. The three turn around and she starts moving with her hand in her pocket. She pulls out a knife and makes a cut on her hand. The blade becomes bathed and then her blood seems to interact with the sword, beginning to flow up her arm. The one with glasses then points to the dust and says it's coming. The girl takes a step forward and responds that she'll handle it. That little knife appears to have absorbed her entire arm and has now turned into a massive sword. On her back, it shows that she is part of the Yellow Dust Task Force. The scene then shifts to a completely different place. In a building, a job interview for public service in the city of Seoul is taking place. A bunch of people are in the waiting room while numbers are called. In the bathroom, someone says they feel like they're about to die. He doesn't want to go in, he just wants to go home. His heart is about to explode. With his hand on his chest, heart racing, he says this is impossible. He goes to the sink, splashes water on his face, and tries to calm down, repeating to himself that yes, he can do it. He just needs to take a few more pills, and even though there are a lot, at least they work. Suddenly, he glances to the side and a little bird lands on a branch. The tiny animal looks at him and the guy stares back intently. After a second of silence, the creature opens a big eye, asking what he's looking at and telling him he's screwed. However, the guy isn't even that shaken, just commenting that panic attacks really are a disaster. Meanwhile, on the way to the interview room, the news report shows that 4 guys who were camping went missing near a province. Our protagonist keeps walking, telling himself that he can do it. His name is Maru. He is 29 years old and the most average person possible. He's just an ordinary student from a regular school who graduated from a mediocre university and is struggling to find a job. Man, if that's his mother, I'm scared. I don't know what's bigger, her heart or her jaw. This is the 5th year that our guy has been trying to become a public servant, and only now has he reached the interview stage. At that moment, a woman enters the room and calls his name. He immediately stands up excitedly, saying he's here, while repeating to himself that this time he'll definitely make it. The guy marches stiffly, telling himself it's going to be easy, until he comes face to face with the big boss behind the laptop staring at him. The guy swallows hard, and the interviewer asks why he wants to become a civil servant. He blurts out awkwardly, shouting that he wants to give back to the community and help society. Yeah, that's it. But in his head, he's thinking that what he actually wants is stability, a steady salary, a secure life, and not too many adventures. Then the interviewer asks what he would do if his superior did something wrong. Maru replies that honestly, he would point out what the person did wrong and try to find a solution, but would remain flexible and positive. He knows that if he says he wouldn't do anything, these guys won't approve him, so he's just lying, as if he would actually get involved in other people's business. The guy then asks how he handles people. With a bright and confident smile, he says he's terrible at it. He can't communicate well, gets stressed easily, and was bullied at school because of his panic attacks and everything else. That's what he said, but in his head, he was going to say that he's super friendly, has great friends, and still keeps in touch with his classmates. The interviewer looks confused, and the fool realizes he said what he was supposed to think and thought what he was supposed to say. What an idiot. The guy just clears his throat and says they'll move on to the last question. Even a flash of light reflects off his glasses as he asks how Maru handled the most difficult moment of his life. Looking like a complete fool, Maru says that life has been pretty easy for him, and he hasn't really gone through much. But the guy insists, telling him to just mention any problem that comes to mind. Maru, all twisted up, says that nothing really comes to mind, except for that time he went to the mountains with his father. That's when he recalls a memory of himself near that yellow mist. His heart starts racing and he remembers the black creature with golden eyes staring at him. Now his breathing becomes shallow. The creature in front of him had countless eyes sprouting from its head, with a pile of bloody bodies on the ground while Maru was still just a child. Now frozen in the interview, his vision begins to blur and the chair tips backward, making him fall to the ground. He stares at the ceiling, everything spinning, until the interviewer approaches, calling for Mr. Han, shaking his shoulders and asking if he's okay. However, in the middle of his panic attack, the boy tries to hold back his vomit. Too late, the interviewer must have gotten completely drenched. And just like that, we're back at his house with him sprawled out on the bed, mumbling that it was a disaster. He's sure that interview is a lost cause. Now without a job, without a girlfriend, and without friends, how is he supposed to live an ordinary life? Suddenly, someone knocks on the door and he has no idea who it is. Still a mess, he stumbles to the door and opens it, asking what it is. Man, it's a Giga Chad woman. Or maybe it's not even a woman, I can't say for sure. The towering human asks why he didn't answer sooner. He calls her mom, but then sees her stepping into the room. 3 meters tall, built like a JoJo character. But of course, a mother is always a mother. She says she brought him some food and was about to leave. He thanks her, asking if there's any meat. She replies that there isn't, just kimchi and beans. He thanks her anyway. With a jawline that would make mewing practitioners jealous, she glances around and notices that all he's been eating is instant noodles, dirtying napkins, and drinking soda. Meanwhile, he sits there, all crooked but happy with his meal. Seeing the mess around him, she starts tidying up, wondering how he can live in such filth. He says he'll clean it later, but she's more interested in how the interview went. That's the final blow. Now the poor guy slumps to the floor, completely defeated. He mutters to himself that there's no way he's telling her he vomited on the interviewer. His mother crosses her arms and smacks his back, saying that if he can't even pass this one, there's no point in worrying. While he suffers, she keeps cleaning. A while later, she even hands him some pocket money. He's moved by her kindness but refuses, saying that he's an adult now and needs to work. But man, she just stretches out her massive arm, activating every muscle, and he immediately accepts. She scratches her gigantic chin and comments that if he failed the interview, then his shaman must have been right. She then tells him that he has to visit the mountain. For a moment, he looks terrified, but in the next, we're already there. The sun is blazing and the guy is wearing a sweater and pants. Now that's a true otaku. As he wonders how many years it's been, he realizes he never imagined he'd be back here, standing in front of the mountain where everything happened. But then he remembers that his mother spoke with an excellent shaman, consulting about why he couldn't land a job. The shaman's response was that it wasn't due to his panic attacks or ADHD. It was because his father, who died 20 years ago and mysteriously disappeared, had left a barrier on his soul that needed to be cleansed. Until he did that, he wouldn't be able to move forward in life. To become a public servant, he had to make an offering on the mountain to appease his father's soul. But after walking so much, he has no idea when he'll finally reach his destination. Until after a while, he stands before a gate and says, "This is it." He opens it and pauses for a second, glancing to the side. At that moment, he seems to see an identical version of himself. Given its transparency, I guess it's either a soul or a memory. The boy rushes to the house's entrance and slowly starts opening the door. Inside, a man stands with his back turned. Maru fully opens the door and just stands there staring. After a moment, he moves closer, tugs at his father's pant leg, and says he's hungry. But his father seems to have a strange expression and suddenly starts screaming. The boy flinches, and with that, the illusion vanishes. Then he feels a sharp pain in his chest and realizes that another panic attack is coming. He takes a deep breath and exhales. A bit calmer now, he reaches into his backpack, pulls out the liquor, and pours it into a cup. He tosses it around the house while telling his father that he hopes he's having fun wherever he is. He explains that he only came because his mother asked him to, asking his father to rest in peace. That's why he's there, to offer prayers to the spirits of the mountain. He recounts that after his father passed, his mother worked tirelessly so he could grow up and find a job. As he performs the prayer and offering, that yellow dust starts creeping in. Maru wonders if all this smoke is because there's a fire in the mountain. He starts running, reminding himself that safety comes first. But then he hears a strange voice echoing, repeating, "Safety first." He wonders if it was just an echo and looks back. Within the yellow mist, a figure emerges. "Ma'am, you've seen this before, so why are you still standing there?" A bloated-bellied, burst-headed monster appears, repeating, "Safety first." Poor Maru has so many hallucinations that he assumes it's just another one. He wipes his eyes, expecting it to disappear. But whatever it is, it keeps approaching him. He knows something is wrong and that he better start running. But then something pierces through his stomach. Already on his knees, he wonders if this is how he's going to die. Spending his whole life studying, struggling to get a job, and never even getting to enjoy anything. On the other hand, at least if he dies, he won't have to worry about work or bills anymore. He smirks, saying that he knows no one will care. But then he remembers his Giga Chad mother. She always worked hard, supported him no matter what, and was happy just to see her son doing well. The courage of Giga Chad runs through his veins, and he starts getting up, even with that thing still impaled in him, saying he won't die here. However, the creature catches a scent and, looking all strange, starts moving toward him. Repeating the same words about safety first, the monster moves in to take a bite, and inside its mouth, an eye is visible. The creature latches onto Maru's waist, and he tries to push his torso away to avoid being bitten. However, the monster's mouth is huge, and it sinks its teeth into his shoulder. The poor guy screams in agony, thinking to himself that if this keeps up, he'll pass out. That's when he remembers his father telling him to eat. Well, if the monster can bite, so can he. He bites into the creature's neck, tearing off a chunk. Damn, this boy is brutal. The The monster never expected the tables to turn like this, and now it's writhing in pain, while the massive eye inside its mouth keeps staring at him. From within its iris, a dark energy spreads, leaking out of its head. Maru's mind is suddenly flooded with visions of countless bodies being dragged away by these creatures, a kind of carnage where the monsters slaughter each other. Watching over all of it is his strange green eye, observing the battlefield from above. Maru tries to comprehend what he's seeing, who's speaking to him, and whether he might already be dead. His mouth is filled with a metallic taste, and he wonders if this is the taste of death. Someone calls his name. Once again, he wonders who it could be this time. Slowly, he opens his eyes, and a guide at his left asks what he's doing in a restricted area. With his mouth still bloody, Maru is confused and quickly stands up in shock. He immediately looks around, wondering where that monster went or the creature that emerged from the yellow dust. The guy in the Hawaiian shirt wants to know what Maru saw and what he said. Maru explains that a yellow mist appeared beside him. He was attacked by a monster, and now he just woke up. He was sure he was going to die because his stomach had been pierced through. The people who found him exchange glances and signal to each other. The guy in the Hawaiian shirt comments that when the alarm went off about a demon, he thought it was a false alert, but apparently it wasn't. Moreover, it looks like this kid killed it. The girl responds that it's impossible. Sure, you can gain a demon's power through its blood, but you can't immediately use its abilities. The guy glances at Maru, calls his name, and asks if he knows what happened yesterday. Standing there in his torn shirt like some kind of fashion challenger, Maru wonders what he means by yesterday. Then he looks at his phone and nearly jumps. He's been unconscious for an entire day. Meanwhile, the dude comments that if he survived for this long, he definitely gained abilities. The girl says it's too soon to make any claim since he just woke up and won't understand the situation yet. The guy reassures her, saying not to worry, that everyone goes through this, then places his hands on Maru's shoulders, saying he arrived at the perfect time, he's going to have to participate. Maru has no idea what the guy means, but he's told to change his clothes first since his current ones are in tatters. A short time later, they're back at the port for the orientation for new employees in the special service. Now Maru is sitting there in his old shirt, completely lost. How did he suddenly end up at an orientation for government officials? Not to mention the atmosphere is anything but welcoming. Everyone looks strange with unsettling expressions. That's when someone in red clogs walks in. She tugs on her pants and damn, another Giga-Chad woman. Seriously, is everyone here doing mewing? She introduces herself as Yu Young, head of this place, and welcomes the new employees. Maru raises his hand and says that maybe he shouldn't be participating in this event, but she just tells him not to worry, that she just received his information and he's been admitted. Congratulations, he's a new hire. The poor guy stands there, completely baffled by what this crazy woman is talking about. She continues with her script, saying that everyone here should already be familiar with the special employees of this place. Their job is to protect lives. First and foremost, they are not allowed to tell their family, relatives, or anyone close to them that they work here. If this information leaks, they will be punished for violating national security laws. Maru thinks to himself that this is an extremely serious statement. Yu Young then says that everyone here must have received new demon abilities this month. When a demon's blood enters your bloodstream, there's a small chance of gaining an ability. Right away, Maru realizes that this must have happened when he bit the monster's neck. She continues saying that their lucky demons currently only inhabit the mountains. The yellow dust is the first sign that a demon is about to appear. Its concentration ranges from 1 to 10. Obviously, the more dust, the stronger the creature. She then calls for Xianwu, who raises his hand. She remarks that since he received the ability from a level 7 creature, she's looking forward to seeing his potential. The handsome guy responds confidently, saying he'll do his best and she doesn't need to worry. Then Yu Young shifts her attention to Maru. She mentions that he received an ability from a level 1 demon and asks what it is. Still disoriented, he admits that he has no idea what his ability is yet. Immediately, some smug bastard nearby starts laughing. That guy deserves a bite on the neck. Or maybe not. Something tells me that would be peculiar. Better let it slide. Maru feels annoyed but decides to ignore it. After all, his priority is to get out of this place as soon as possible. Suddenly, a loud alarm blares in the room. Yu Young says it's perfect timing. This is the warning that a demon has appeared. The very next moment, they're climbing the mountain. She announces that it's time for their practical test, the perfect opportunity for them to test their new abilities. Of course, the one questioning why the hell he's even here is our dear Maru. What he really wants is to get out of here before things get dangerous. But just as he's thinking once again about safety, he encounters the damned yellow dust. His expression says it all. He's scared shitless. Then through the thick fog, he sees the silhouette of a woman. It's the mummy-armed girl and he wonders if she's okay. At that moment, she turns around and Maru is startled. She had impaled a 3-meter-tall creature with a stake. Maru stumbles to the ground in shock while everyone else looks on in awe. Yu Young tells them all to pay attention because the practical test has begun. The creature in front of them looks strong, but it's just a rank 1 demon, the weakest there is. Captain Kang had already pinned it against the wall, so no one needed to worry. Kang, however, was more interested in the kid with the dumbstruck face, the one who somehow killed a demon all by himself yesterday. She was curious about the potential of someone who gained powers at the exact moment they faced a creature, since that was extremely rare. Yu Yang, on the other hand, was excited. She ordered everyone to start using their abilities. But our boy was just standing there in the cold, staring at that massive creature, thinking that this woman had lost her mind. How was he supposed to fight something like that? A panic attack surged back, his chest tightened, and breathing became difficult. In the blink of an eye, he found himself standing on top of a red river. A creature with black limbs approached. It seemed to be some kind of woman-dog hybrid, covered in shaggy hair. Ugly as hell. He was just standing there, suffering quietly, when the monster nearly placed its hand on his head. The creature grasped his entire skull, shifted to the side, and told him to eat. So the bastard's got a Naruto QB situation going on in his head. But on the outside, he was giving off serious Tokyo Ghoul vibes. Because while everyone else was tense, he was practically drooling, saying he wanted to eat. And not just a little drool, no, this was some high-quality illustrated saliva. Someone touched his shoulder, startling him. It was Shanwu, asking if he was laughing out of sheer terror. Honest as ever, Maru responded that no, he was just starving. Man, I already want to punch this damn Shanwu for thinking Maru is pathetic for being hungry at a time like this. Now that I know our boy is Tokyo Ghoul, maybe he really does deserve a bite. Maru calmed himself down, wondering what the hell that was and why he was so hungry. At the top of the mountain, Yu Yang called for everyone's attention. Before they could use their abilities, she needed to explain the basics. She clarified that the very existence of the yellow mist was due to the demons. Obviously, the stronger the demon, the more mist it produced. She then pulled out a knife and said that wasn't all. Making a small cut on her hand, she explained that those who had received demon powers also had enhanced regeneration when inside the mist. However, a fatal wound would still kill them, so they needed to be careful. Additionally, their powers only activated within the mist while fighting creatures. Outside of it, they were nothing more than ordinary people. Seunwoo, the most humble man in Korea, yawned and asked how long she was going to keep talking. The most important part should have been mentioned first, how to activate the power. He then said he'd give it a try. Biting his own lip, blood started to flow and the yellow mist drifted toward him. Something within him seemed to activate. He felt his strength increasing and his eyes turned golden. The secret was to let the mist enter his bloodstream. He put on a glove and declared that it was time to begin. Suddenly, the stake that had been lodged in the monster's head exploded. Kang shouted for everyone to be careful as the yellow mist began surrounding them. Now free, the monster started moving, letting out a roar in their direction before slamming the ground. The poor newbies who had just started this job were already terrified. Kang moved to intervene, but Yu Yang ordered her to stay put. Kang insisted that this was too much for beginners. But Yu Yang still refused, saying that this was the perfect time for practice. If they couldn't handle a level 1 creature, they would just die anyway. The monster suddenly sniffed the air and locked eyes directly on Maru, who was standing there, scared stiff. He immediately wondered why this damn thing was looking at him. Then, out of nowhere, the monster's hand opened and a knife shot out, flying straight at Maru. Damn thing was fast. Maru took a hit to the arm, collapsing to the ground in agony. Kang felt sorry for him as he writhed in pain. He got back up, arm throbbing, but the monster was already closing in, ready to crush him. The beast landed right beside him, creeping closer. The two locked eyes as it reached out. But suddenly, something burst out of the ground. A monstrous centipede wrapped itself around the creature. It was choking the beast, staring it down. Turns out, this was Seunwoo's ability, the demon centipede. For someone who loves being handsome, his power was ugly as hell. Then the female student attacked from behind, slicing the monster's head. Her ability was from the Rojo demon, whatever that was. What I do know is that the monster just lost half its brain and was now screaming toward the sky, spreading more mist. The girl smirked, saying at least they had won. But then the yellow mist swirled back into the monster's head, restoring it completely. Now the idiots realized that the creature's regeneration was also insanely powerful. The monster grabbed the centipede and yanked it from Seunwoo's neck. Since it was connected to his arm, the creature used it like a whip, flinging Seunwoo into the girl. Then it pulled Seunwoo back in, squeezing him tight. This thing was petty. Opening its massive mouth, it prepared to take a bite, when suddenly, something snapped inside a glove. The monster's neck twisted violently, and it let go of Seunwoo. Now it made sense. Seunwoo wasn't just some flashy dude. The bastard was stylish. He had the ability of the temple demon. Apparently, when he broke his own bones, he could break the monster's too. The creature lunged at him, but Seunwoo took off his glove and shattered his own wrist, telling it to die. With that, the monster's entire neck twisted and exploded. Its body collapsed to the ground, leaving its head at his feet like a soccer ball. Seunwoo explained that once a demon's head was severed, it could no longer emit or absorb mist. So that was it. The rest of the trainees were left stunned. He commented that it was a good chance to test something new. But then Kang appeared behind him and asked if he intentionally broke her stake to wake up the demon. The kid had villain potential. He simply denied it. No, of course not. Where was the proof? But she grabbed his arm and said they could find out real quick, by breaking his fingers to see if her weapon shattered again. With that, Yidong clapped her hands, cutting in and praising Seunwoo for doing well on his first try. However, someone was missing. Our boy had bolted out of there. He wanted no part in this, working a job like this. No way. He wanted a peaceful, ordinary life, not one where he had to fight demons with cursed powers. But someone needed to tell him that he was the protagonist of this story, so he wouldn't be escaping the action anytime soon. Yu Young shook her head, saying that someone who ran away like that wasn't qualified to be a special agent. Meanwhile, Kang was still trying to process what she had seen earlier. There were countless targets in that area, yet the creature had clearly chosen to go after him. Yu Young immediately ordered them to find him and check if he was still alive. But then Kang was the only one who noticed the obvious. Why hadn't the yellow mist disappeared if the leader was dead? Now everyone else started wondering the same thing. Meanwhile, Maru stood in front of a gate that was exuding an insane amount of mist. He wondered why it was there. At that very moment, a new monster appeared. The thing was huge, at least 15 meters tall, and Maru immediately ducked behind a bush. Why him again? Of all people, why did he, the one most desperate to escape, have to run into something like this? He took another peek to see if it had vanished, but nope. The monster was right behind him. Just then, the TikToker with the dyed hair called for Kang Chana. Yeah, that's her name, folks. She asked what was going on, and he said he had received an alert from headquarters. A level 3 demon had been detected in the area. Yu Young found it odd. Demons didn't usually show up one after another like this. Kang wanted to know where, and well, we could already guess, couldn't we? Our boy was running for his life through the restricted area, skidding across the ground, shouting for help, until he tripped over a rock and face planted. He got up and spotted that same house, his father's house. At least he knew this place and where to hide. He dashed to a house with an iron door and slipped behind it, panting, wondering what the hell that thing was. He peeked through a gap, reassuring himself that there was no way the monster would follow him this far. Of course, it was right there. Why the hell was this thing so obsessed with him? Not to mention he had no idea what those things floating around its head were. Just then, he heard the sound of the gate opening. An old man stepped inside, calling out for someone and wondering why there was so much yellow mist in the air. The old guy's cataracts were bad. He couldn't even see the 15-meter-tall monster standing right in front of him. Meanwhile, the creature was grinning, ready to devour him. Maru knew he had to do something to save this old man before he got killed. The problem? He wasn't strong enough. How was he supposed to pull this off? That's when he remembered what Yu Young had explained. Those who had received demon abilities could regenerate wounds while inside the mist. However, a fatal wound would still be enough to kill him. His hands trembled. He knew he might die. Maybe he should just stay hidden and save himself instead of throwing his life away for some stranger. The old man squinted into the distance, asking if that was Changsek's mother. Even the monster seemed confused, repeating her words. The old woman took a step forward, scolding it for mimicking her. Then she froze. Now that was close. Her eyesight might have been bad, but this close-up, her cataracts weren't a problem anymore. She could see the massive creature standing right in front of her. Terrified, she stumbled back, struggling to comprehend what she was looking at. Meanwhile, the monster just kept repeating her words. It raised a single finger and spikes took aim. Then, it attacked. Blood splattered. And I haven't bet $1 million that Maru had thrown himself in front of it and taken the hit. Sure enough, as the old woman slowly opened her eyes, she found the boy bleeding out in her lap. He weakly asked if she was okay. She said yes, but he collapsed onto her, missing an arm, impaled all over. Man, this kid suffers. Struggling to stay conscious, he told the old lady to run, while wondering why he had been cursed with a level 1 ability. His power was as useless as the resumes he sent to companies. In the end, he was going to die, and he wouldn't even be able to save the old woman. All he wanted was for someone stronger to show up and save him for once. As he lay there waiting for help, the yellow mist began seeping into his arm. Veins started surfacing on his neck. And here came the telltale cultural artwork drool. Then, in a sudden burst, he lunged straight at the monster, to bite it. Meanwhile, Kang was sprinting through the forest. She heard a scream behind her and turned. She burst through the gate, only to witness something insane. Maru was feasting on the monster's neck. Horrified, she couldn't comprehend what this rookie was doing. The creature grabbed Maru by the head and slammed him against the wall. He was barely conscious, but it looked like he had swallowed the chunk he bit off. The monster, on the other hand, was furious. The little bastard had taken a bite out of him. As the monster tried to flee, Kang noticed something. The part that Maru had bitten wasn't regenerating. She didn't understand why, but this wasn't the time to worry about that. She charged at the monster, leaping high and grabbing one of its crystals. With that, she activated her Steel Demon ability, transforming the crystal into a sword. The monster roared, hurling spikes at her. She turned just in time, and reflected them all with the blade. The creature was forced to defend itself against its own attack. But now, she was right in front of it, deadly, beautiful. With a precise vertical slash, the creature was split in half, and with that, it crumbled into dust. The battle was finally over. Blood rained over the scene, drenching the area in red. She approached the old woman, asking if she was okay. The woman seemed to have fainted. Moments later, she suddenly woke up, confused. Kang, now completely clean, probably because the blood had turned to dust, casually reassured her, saying that a wild boar had passed through. That was all. The old woman muttered that boars often passed by around here. Kang assured her not to worry. She would handle the problem. The woman thanked her for her hard work and returned home. Kang's expression changed immediately. She turned toward Maru, determined to find out what this kid was. She had never heard of someone with a level 1 ability regenerating an entire arm out of nowhere. In theory, his ability should have been weak. Cut to our boy screaming in frustration. He had just received a message saying he would be starting work tomorrow. But after remembering that spiked monster that nearly killed him, he had zero interest in showing up for that job. Maru collapsed onto his bed, muttering that there was no way he was going to that job. But on the other hand, he really did need work. Desperate for a job or not, he was too exhausted to think, so he decided to just sleep. However, if there was one thing this guy never got, it was a moment of peace. As always, he was dreaming about that war where the red monsters devoured and slaughtered each other. A voice called out, telling him to come back. Suddenly, he woke up in a cold sweat, panting, staring at his hands, unable to make sense of what he had just experienced. Morning had already arrived. He glanced outside, only to see that the entire mountain was on fire. Amidst the burning trees and bushes, a creature made of ashes was walking, setting everything ablaze. Then a soaking wet girl appeared, throwing water at it. To be honest, those little splashes weren't going to do much. But she wasn't alone. Another person arrived and launched an ice attack. The monster's leg froze solid, turning it into an oversized popsicle. The girl called for the leader, noting how strange it was. Creatures like this weren't supposed to appear at night. But the guy told her not to worry about that yet. First, they had to stop the fire from spreading. The monster was beginning to melt the ice. He pulled out 2 swords, saying he would take care of it. He charged toward the creature. But right at that moment, something emerged from his forehead. A sinister eye opened, issuing a command. Bring that person. Instantly, the monster broke free. The captain and the creature closed in on each other. One prepared to slash, the other about to throw a punch. At the very least, the guy managed to block, but even then, he was sent flying into a tree, crashing hard against it. He was wrecked. The soaking wet girl called for the leader, panicked. But the creature hunched down and a cauldron formed on its back. Lava began to spill out, and the captain realized that the monster was getting bigger and stronger. Meanwhile, at headquarters in Seoul, the monitors were flashing red, blaring emergency alerts. Yu-young demanded a status report. With all these warning signals, it was obvious things were going south fast. A staff member reported that 20 mountains were under attack simultaneously. The way these creatures were appearing had suddenly changed. This had only started happening this week, but no one knew why. One of the staff members interrupted, saying they were getting an urgent call from Busan. Yu-young answered, asking what the issue was. Anne was immediately greeted with, "Hey, big sis." The caller was Ba Myong-sik, director of the Busan division. He wanted to know when she was planning to visit his city. She sighed, greeted him, then told him to get to the point. That's when he explained what was happening. There had been a portal open for 3 days straight. Yu-young was stunned. How was that even possible? Reachers just kept pouring out. The team in charge of the area was exhausted, fighting non-stop with no end in sight. Yu-young asked why the portal wasn't closing. Had they identified the cause? Myong-sik said that the monster they were dealing with just kept repeating the same thing over and over. They even sent a girl with interpreter abilities to figure it out. The monster's message: bring that person. As the creature continued rampaging, Yu-young asked who exactly this person was. Myong-sik admitted that was the problem. They had no idea. He didn't know who it was, but whoever it was needed to show up fast. Yu-young then made a call to someone in a helicopter. The guy picked up, asking what the problem was. She quickly explained the situation on the mountain. Without hesitation, the guy stepped to the edge of the helicopter and simply said, "I'm on my way." He told her he'd call back once he had handled things. And with that, he leaped, plunging through the air like a shooting star. On his way down, he passed through a wave of yellow mist. This guy had zero fear. Then, all of a sudden, he activated spatial inversion, suspending himself midair. He landed gracefully on top of the gate. The people below were shocked. Who was this lunatic who just dropped in and out of nowhere? One of the women yelled for him to get down. It was dangerous. Meanwhile, the red-hooded demon grinned, seemingly pleased by his arrival. It lunged at the woman, aiming for a piercing kick. She barely managed to dodge. The problem was, now the monster was right above her. She had no way to escape. But then, the newcomer reached into thin air, opened his spatial tear, and ripped out the monster's entire spinal column. The creature froze in shock. He casually congratulated everyone for their hard work, saying they could rest now. From here on out, he would handle things. The captain was thrilled, but the girl wanted to know, who was this guy? The captain explained. This was the first ever special ability user, the founder of the task force. The guy stretched, placed a hand on the ground, and said, "Let's get this over with." He was the strongest demon ability user, Director Jong Il-do. Purple lines spread across the ground, reaching toward the mist. They rose, higher, higher, until they towered above the moon itself. From afar, everyone saw it, wondering what the hell that thing was. The guy with glasses admitted he had never seen this in person before. But in theory, this was the most powerful spatial ability in existence. Jong was carving a path straight into the yellow mist. Meanwhile, back on the burning mountain, the magma monster had grown even larger, and the ice water dew couldn't hold out any longer. The girl had collapsed. The guy called for her to get up, or they were both going to die. The lava beast charged again. The ice user desperately raised a barrier, but the monster smashed through it, sending him flying. It kept attacking, hammering at him repeatedly, until the shield shattered. He crashed to the ground, gasping for breath. He knew this was it. This was how he was going to die. But then, a rift appeared behind the monster. John yanked the beast's head through it, hurling the entire thing away. The explosion sent crows scattering through the sky. John declared that it was time to take care of this monster. Not just this one, but all of them. He activated every single rift unit. Across Gangwon province, a boy was being trampled by a monster. The creature spoke something in a strange tongue, then stabbed him in the chest. But at that moment, a rift opened behind it, and the beast was dragged inside. Across all the mountains under attack, the same thing started happening. The monsters were being pulled into the same place. On the one hand, this was good. Now they were all concentrated. On the other hand, this was extremely dangerous. One of the staff members noted that the danger signals were disappearing, and the director calmly stated that this just meant he had arrived safely. The good news? Jung's plan worked, and now all the monsters were in one place. The bad news? Jung's plan worked, and now all the monsters were in one place. But Jung was thrilled. Now it was time to begin. The demon screeched and charged toward him. But even surrounded, he simply pointed at one and tore open a spatial rift. Then, with the grace of a ballet dancer, he executed a Michael Jackson spin, slicing in every direction at once. Demon heads flew into the air while the rest of the squad watched in disbelief. They had never seen someone this powerful before. John then approached the magma creature and called for the translator. He told her to handle this. Then he asked the monster why all of them had suddenly become so agitated this week. The translator relayed the answer. Bring that person. Jung frowned. He asked, who is this person? The monster simply repeated the question. The translator reported that the creature was just copying what Jung had said. Without hesitation, Jung slammed the monster into the ground. If that's the case, he said, then we'll just keep killing them until they stop coming. Now drenched in blood, he turned his attention to the gate. Once again, he placed his hand on the ground and opened a spatial void beneath it. The entire area was absorbed. Honestly, that was an efficient way to handle things. One of the squad members in the background sighed in relief, saying she felt safer knowing they had someone like Jung to rely on. In a single moment, he deactivated his power, and the gate was gone. The next day, back at headquarters, Yu Young entered the office and immediately asked Jung what he had done with the portal. He casually explained that it was inside his black void and that he was exhausted from the effort. But the insufferable woman just told him he should handle everything as he always did. Jung groaned, saying that he had limits too. It wasn't like he could run the entire organization by himself. He turned on the TV, saying that he understood, but he had already gathered the information she asked for. The screen displayed photos of all the new recruits. Yu Young wanted to know why he was so interested in them. He explained that he was trying to understand what the demons wanted. Not only that, he wanted to figure out why the demons wanted him. Amidst the endless pile of monstrous bodies, there was a single gigantic woman's corpse. That same green eye was watching, still repeating its message, bring him. Meanwhile, Maru's first day on the job, Maru arrived at work. His mother had cried when she found out he got a government job. He couldn't give her any details, but she was so happy that he simply couldn't refuse. The moment he arrived, he was immediately greeted by a Hawaiian shirt guy who bluntly asked why the hell he came back. The guy shook his head, saying he didn't want a coward on his team. Maru only smelled the reek of alcohol. The actual boss greeted them, and Seonwoo, still fuming, immediately said he didn't want to be here. He wanted to be transferred to the main city. But the leader just shrugged, saying he had no idea why a level 7 had been sent to this place either. Clearly, there was some kind of issue with him. Either way, both of them were welcome to Gangwa's team. Maru wondered what exactly he'd be doing here when there weren't demons to hunt. As soon as the leader opened the door, Maru saw everyone in the office killing zombies and dissecting creatures. But then, reality hit. It was just an ordinary office like any other. The guy in the Hawaiian shirt introduced himself as Go Deokman, the team leader. The girl with glasses was Yoon Ji-won, who had 7 years of experience. The plant guy, who had also been here for 7 years, was Kim Yeobak. And the TikToker. We already knew him, Yoseok. He had 1 year of experience. Go Deokman told them to get along and to sit wherever. Maru, sweating, found a seat. He wondered if everyone had been this stressed on their first day. Nervous, he greeted his new coworkers, trying to make a good impression. But then, Seonwoo, sitting directly across from him, glared and told him to stop looking at him. Poor Maru was crushed. Seonwoo, meanwhile, was pissed that he had been sent to this isolated place. So Maru turned his attention to Yoseok, who was busy browsing designer brands online. He asked what exactly their job was. Yoseok casually pointed around, explaining that they were a special unit that dealt with the yellow dust. There were 13 divisions spread throughout Seoul, and those ranked level 7 or higher were assigned to special missions. As for their island, it was mostly for incompetent people, or for those who were just plain weird. Maru immediately related that explained why he was here. But still, something about this place felt off. Yoseok added that some capable people volunteered for this job. At that moment, both of them turned their heads, and damn, that girl trained hard. Maru, feeling awkward, straightened up, but she stared right at him. Ji-won told her she should go home after her shift at the station, but she just sat down, saying she had no reason to go home anyway. Kang Chana watched all of this unfold, quietly observing the fact that Maru had ended up here. Something strange had happened. She had woken up with no memory of the previous day. Meanwhile, Maru was shocked to learn that he would be getting hazard pay. The salary was good, but the fact that hazard pay existed made it very clear that his life was constantly in danger. Then, Yosuke mentioned that it was 5 times the normal salary. Maru's expression completely changed. That was a lot of money. Yosuke, annoyed, told him to stop bothering him. He was busy. Maru, meanwhile, was just wondering what the hell he was supposed to do in this place. Time passed. He was getting used to things. He never imagined he'd land such an easy job that paid so much. Then Goodupman stretched, announcing that the workday was over. He approached the 2 newbies, asking if they had any difficulties or questions. Xianwu simply said no. Maru, however, had one question. He wanted to know where demons actually came from and why they existed. Goodupman just shrugged. Nobody knew. Xianwu added that most people believed they came from above. Maru realized that nobody knew where these creatures came from, but nobody seemed to care either. Humanity was doomed. It was frustrating, but somehow, these people were doing their jobs no matter how bizarre things were. Back at headquarters, Yu Young rode the elevator down. She found Zhang standing in front of a golden capsule. He asked her what she thought. She glanced at some reports commenting that the monster appearances seemed to have stabilized. Zhang, however, continued staring at the swirling yellow mist, wondering what had caused this sudden surge of creatures. Yudong suggested that maybe they were getting closer to the truth. Zhang wasn't so sure. He was staring at a fallen angel bound and suspended upside down with white hair and murmured that he wasn't convinced. Zhang wanted all the leaders to stay on high alert for now. If the rest of the organization found out about these details, it would cause absolute chaos. The scene then shifted to Maru, who was asking what they were talking about. The others were grilling some barbecue, casually explaining that this was exactly why they had to celebrate as much as possible. Yudong mentioned that because of this prophecy, they tried to enjoy life every day. Confused, Maru asked them to actually explain what was going on. Hudapin finally answered. There was a prophecy that in 1 year, demons would start raining from the sky. Countless portals would open all over the world, and the earth would be drenched in blood. Maru immediately thought that sounded insanely terrifying. Godopman told him to keep that information secret. It was a very classified secret. Meanwhile, Yudong encouraged everyone to drink until they vomited. Yosuke wanted to go home, and Kang Chana warned them to be careful since they had work tomorrow. Apparently, Seonwoo's biggest weakness was alcohol. He was already wasted and passed out. Maru, however, kept telling everyone to stop drinking while wondering why no one seemed to be scared about this apocalypse prophecy. At that exact moment, a golden light shone above a mountain. A gate opened in the sky. Yellow dust began pouring out. Countless hands emerged from within. The moment the first bald-headed monster began appearing, everyone's phones blared with an emergency alert. Young sighed, disappointed, complaining that nighttime disasters were annoying because she just wanted some time to relax. Meanwhile, Kang Chana stood up, saying she'd be back soon. Seonwoo immediately said he was going with her, but she refused, saying that she wanted to take Han Maru with her. Maru wanted nothing to do with this, yet here he was, forehead pressed against the car window, wondering how he had ended up in this mess. Kang then called his name, reassuring him that he didn't need to worry so much about the prophecy. Maru replied that this wasn't something to be taken lightly, but she confidently said she was sure that the people at the top were already making the necessary preparations. He might not know it, but countless powerful individuals worked in this organization. Right now, all they had to focus on was locating the demons and killing them. Maru was terrified, but he was also absolutely smitten by how cool she was. She then mentioned that he seemed to have a special kind of ability, and she was excited to see what he could do. Maru was thrilled for the first time someone actually expected something from him. Then she casually remarked, "I've never seen someone eat like you before." She wondered if it was some kind of gluttony demon ability. Maru had no idea what she was talking about. She explained that it literally seemed like he had the power to eat demons. He hated the sound of that. But then, the scene cut to a monster being impaled. Kang had easily pinned the thing down and turned to him. "You're really gonna make me say it? Eat it." Beaming, she explained that his ability seemed to prevent regeneration, so she wanted to see it in action. It was time for him to take a bite. Maru hesitated, ripping the monster's tentacle. At this point, he figured he might as well do his job. The creature was disgusting, but he told himself to just think of it as eating octopus at a restaurant. He leaned in, teeth bared, but barely nibbled. Kang scolded him, telling him to actually put some effort into it. He needed to bite like he meant it. Maru sighed, said he understood, and reluctantly started chewing. The next day, back at the office, Maru was dying. His entire body ached. Seonwoo immediately smirked and said he heard that Maru threw up yesterday. What an idiot. Maru didn't even care. He just asked Seonwoo what exactly he expected from him. Seonwoo scoffed. Someone like him should have never been sent here. They should assign someone actually useful. He should be grateful that Commander Kang had even the slightest interest in his ability. Then he walked off, flat out calling Maru useless trash. Maru was completely roasted, but to be fair, the guy had a point. He needed to wake up and start trying harder. That was when the alarm rang. Kang stood up, about to call his name. But Maru was in the bathroom, hands on his face, trying to figure out how he was going to get used to eating monsters. He had an ability, which was good, but his ability was to eat monsters, which was not good. As he walked down the hallway, he suddenly ran into Kang. Aunt nearly had a heart attack. His soul practically left his body. She raised an eyebrow and asked if he had been hiding in the bathroom. Maru admitted that yes, he had heard the alarm, but he got food poisoning after biting that creature. Kang sighed, lowering her head. So you're really not suited for this job, she muttered. She explained that he didn't have to work for the government just because he had a special power. There was another option. He could just sign a contract stating that he wouldn't talk about this to anyone. Then he could live his life under constant surveillance for the rest of his days. Maru was shocked. He thought the alternative would be a little easier than that. Kang added that this was better than dying on the battlefield. People with his level of mental fortitude usually didn't last very long. The way he was acting, he could easily be sent on a mission to save someone and end up letting them die because of a mistake. If he really couldn't do this, he needed to leave the job now. Kang leaned in real close and said, "We don't need people who are useless." Damn, poor Maru. He got roasted everywhere he went. Meanwhile, at the office, Kang figured that Maru had probably given up. You'd think this was the start of his motivation arc. But no, he was standing on a bridge, actually happy for once. Maybe he really wasn't cut out for this. Maybe living under surveillance was better than dying in battle. Poor guy had no idea he was the protagonist of this story, meaning escape was impossible. Right at that moment, his phone rang. It was his mother. He picked up, already thinking about how he didn't want to keep fighting monsters. He answered with a, "Hey, what are you up to?" She told him she was on a hiking trip to Enwang Mountain. Maru froze. Then he put a hand over his face and groaned. Hadn't he already told her to stop climbing mountains? But then, the call quality suddenly worsened. His mother paused, confused, asking why there was so much yellow dust in the air. Instantly, his heart dropped. The call cut off. Oh hell no. Now the motivation arc was kicking in. Enwang Mountain, the security team. The security team was already on site, preparing to deal with a demon. The guards stood frozen, unsure of what to do. One of them glanced up and saw a creature perched in a tree, gnawing on a human arm. A crystal gleamed on its forehead. It smiled at them. Meanwhile, Maru was sprinting toward the mountain. Seconds later, everyone on the security team was already dead. The level 5 demon was devouring the new recruits, and no one was left to stop it. But then, a heavyset woman, the regional leader, arrived. She activated her duplication ability and told the survivors to call for backup while she stalled the monster. One of them ran to use the landline. Since phones didn't work in this area, it was their only option. Back at headquarters, Yu Young received the emergency request and immediately started coordinating the response. She explained that civilians were in immediate danger. If that level 5 demon made it down to the city, it would be a massacre. They were running out of time. Everyone needed to move now. Meanwhile, Maru arrives. But guess who was already there? Maru. He jumped out of a taxi, sprinting full speed toward the entrance. He reached the hiking tour group and frantically looked around for his mother. Not seeing her, he asked one of the guides to let him through. His mother was inside. The guide refused, saying it was too dangerous. There were wild animals in the area. Wild animals, my ass. Maru knew the truth. It wasn't animals, it was demons. While the guards were busy securing the main entrance, he was already climbing the mountain from the other side. It was the fastest road up. As he climbed, he prayed that his mother was safe. Deep in the mist, amidst the thick yellow mist, someone was struggling with a twisted ankle. It was Giga Chad Mom. She casually bent down, told the injured woman to climb on her back, and carried her. Then, she paused, noticing something moving in the fog. "What is that?" she muttered. A hand reached for her. Maru arrived, panicked. His mother turned in shock. "How the hell did you find me?" He explained that he had seen her social media post. She wanted to ask about his new government job, but he brushed it off. Not important right now. The other woman smiled, saying, "Oh, so this is the son you were talking about? I'm so happy for you. A government job is a big deal." Maru's mother beamed. "Yes, now all I have to do is find him a wife, but he's not very popular with girls." Maru sighed. "Can we focus here? We need to leave, now." Then, he felt something. The demon was right above him. He looked up and locked eyes with it. Instantly, his panic attack hit. His breathing staggered. He couldn't move. Every time he saw a demon, this happened. How the hell was he supposed to protect his mother like this? The attack. From below, the injured woman noticed something was wrong. "Hey, that boy looks weird." Maru's mother suddenly screamed his name. The demon turned and leaped at her. She reached out for her son, just as the demon lunged to grab her. Maru dove forward, but tripped, tumbling down the slope like an idiot. Too late. The demon was about to bite down on his mother. Maru screamed. But then, a surprise attack. The demon collapsed, its back bleeding. Maru, confused, stared at the creature. Where did those knives in its back come from? His mother freaked out. What the hell is that? Then she noticed something on her son's head. Maru looked up and realized the knives were his. Oh shit. He had absorbed the power of a demon he had eaten. He suddenly remembered. One of the creatures he fought had this exact ability. Then he felt something weird in his back, and another knife formed. Holy shit, he could control it. That meant his power wasn't just stopping regeneration. He could steal abilities. He smirked. Alright, let's see what this power can do. The The demon was already down, crawling away. It was weaker than he expected. That was weird. Why was everyone on the mountain struggling against something this weak? Meanwhile, a different part of the mountain, a wounded soldier was slumped against the fence. Two agents from headquarters approached him. "Are you all right?" Shaking, the man stammered, "The demon, it was terrifying. It destroyed my team." One of the agents rubbed his chin, doubtful. "That's hard to believe. The leader of this region is a level 7 user." Another agent, slicked back hair, asked, "What ability did the level 5 demon have?" The soldier answered, "It had the mirror ability." Maru's real problem. At that moment, something shimmered on the demon's back. Maru's eyes widened. The attack he just used had been copied. Before he could react, the demon attacked. Its crystals impaled him all over his body. But Maru wasn't panicking. He was just shocked. "That bastard copied me." The demon slowly advanced, its forehead gleaming like a mirror. Maru immediately realized this was a reflection-based ability. The monster mimicked his movements. If he attacked, it would strike back the exact same way. Then behind him, his mother cried out in pain. He turned. Her knee was bleeding. She was worried about his injuries, but he only cared about her ability to heal. He lifted his shirt to show his wounds. "Don't worry, I'm fine." His abs were chiseled. Giga Chad DNA activated. Now he knew. If he wanted to protect his mother, he had to kill this thing. He turned to her. "Hide. I'll take care of this." His mother looked scared, but he turned around and spoke firmly. He was a public servant who protected civilians. He would take care of this in a second and be right back. He launched himself at the monster, grabbed it by the waist, and hurled it off the mountaintop, taking it down with him. His mother screamed as crows scattered into the sky. Maru managed to land on a higher ledge while the creature tumbled down below. He got up, body aching, regenerating little by little. For now, his priority was to keep the demon as far from his mother as possible. If he bought enough time, the mountain team would arrive to handle the situation and everything would turn out fine. But the two agents who had just arrived from headquarters ran into something much worse. It wasn't just a single level 5 creature. There were many invading. A horde of monsters stood there staring while one of the agents looked around, trying to understand why they all looked so similar. The bald agent muttered that the mountain leader had a duplication ability, meaning she had been copied. He knew he had to destroy the original body. The problem was figuring out which one it was. The other agent, completely unfazed, just grinned and said it didn't matter. He just needed to kill all of them. He lunged forward and punched the ground, creating a shockwave that sent the creatures flying. The bald agent sighed, thinking his partner was truly an idiot. But he was sure of one thing. Based on how the clones were fighting, the original wasn't here. There was obviously the one absorbing yellow dust just below Maru. Maru realized that this damn thing was regenerating as fast as he was. The problem was, he was starting to get exhausted from having to heal constantly. Then a voice spoke. "What's wrong, Maru?" His stomach dropped. The demon had copied his mother's voice. Maru snapped. "Don't do that." He yelled and threw knives at it. But his aim was terrible. He muttered that controlling someone else's ability wasn't as easy as it seemed. Meanwhile, the creature calmly formed a crystal and launched it straight into his shoulder. That just pissed him off even more. This time, he unleashed an entire barrage of knives. One direct hit to the monster's shoulder. Maru cheered. But then, the creature grunted, shook its body, and instantly regenerated. Maru's heart sank. They had the same attack ability, but the monster's recovery speed was even worse than his. That meant it was weaker than him. Then he remembered something important. Obviously, it was a conversation with Kang Chana. She had told him before, "I have the feeling you never actually listen to what I say." Lying on the ground, bleeding, Maru muttered that maybe he wasn't made for this. But she had reached out her hand, helped him up, and said, "You're just scared of getting hurt." He had to understand that wounds healed inside the yellow mist, so it didn't matter. The pain was real, yes, but that was just part of it. Plus, he had to eat those damn demons to recover. She had been crushing his hand as she spoke, and he had asked if there was a better way to fight. Kang had thought for a moment before responding. To kill a monster like this, you had to cut off its head and stop it from absorbing yellow dust. Since he lacked an offensive ability, he could only act as support. But on the other hand, he had the best regeneration ability. That meant he shouldn't be afraid to fight monsters head-on. Back in the present, Maru grinned. If his ability was the best, then he wasn't going to be scared anymore. Besides, thanks to gluttony, he had more than enough strength to kill this thing. The problem? He still couldn't aim properly. Landing a precise hit on the neck would be difficult. Meanwhile, the monster kept mocking him in his mother's voice. "What's wrong, Maru?" At that moment, Maru made a decision. If he couldn't aim, then there was only one solution. He threw another crystal at the demon. It dodged, but when it looked up again, Maru was already midair, charging toward it. The creature had no time to react. It unleashed yellow mist, trying to block him. But it bit down on his knife, stopping the attack. Then it grabbed him by the throat. The monster got close to his face and asked, "Why do you fight like this?" It pressed against a rock, then flung them both to the mountaintop, slamming him into the ground. Maru couldn't breathe. He couldn't activate gluttony, but you have to bite this thing. The problem? The demon wasn't close enough. Then, it bit his neck first. Maru couldn't bite back, so he ripped a knife from his back and stabbed the creature aside. Blood poured from his wound. He tried to stop the bleeding, but the monster just stared at him. Then, dizziness hit him. His vision blurred. His wound wasn't healing. Had the monkey copied his ability to block regeneration? Looking at the pool of blood, he had no idea how much time he had left. If he failed here, what would happen? Then, he remembered another moment. Another conversation with Kang Chana. She had sighed and asked, "How many times are you gonna pass out?" He had explained. It was a panic attack. He couldn't control it. His chest tightened, his mind went blank, and all he felt was the certainty of death. Her response? That's exactly why you need to get over it. At this rate, the next time you think you're gonna die, you actually will. You're the last line of defense for civilians. If you're weak, they die. In the present, Jigga Mom was wandering nearby, calling out for him. Maru was somehow still alive, gripping his bleeding neck. But his face looked awful. He picked up a crystal. The monkey copied him. Maru remembered Kang's words. Even if he did, he had to take this monster down with him. He bit down on his lip, furious. Then he screamed and ran straight at the demon. The monster crouched, dodging, and stabbed his ribs. But Maru had thrown his dagger upward. The creature asked, "What are you trying to do?" Maru grabbed it and roared. Every crystal he had thrown so far flew toward them both. The monster froze and got hit by all of them. Actually, they both did. But at least, the last knife he had thrown from above came down and cleanly severed the creature's head. Its limbs detached. Its body collapsed. Maru, shaking, stumbled backward and fell. At headquarters, the agents saw the monster disintegrate and wondered if they had killed the original. The bald one said no. Someone had killed it elsewhere. Back on the mountain, Maru's wounds slowly healed. But this time, he really thought he had almost died. Then he got up, intending to find his mother. But his father's voice whispered behind him, "Eat." His father pointed at the monster's remains. "Go back and eat it." Maru finally understood. That crazy old man had known all along. The monster had a rare and powerful ability. If he ate it, he might gain another power. And he remembered Go-Dukman's prophecy. In 1 year, creatures would rain from the sky. Motivated by the desire to become strong enough to protect his mother, he approached the demon and grabbed its arm. With that, he began his daily meal. Now fully confident and looking sharp, he declared that from this day forward, he would eat any strong demon he encountered. The guy even licked his lips. Sometime later, his mother woke up in the hospital, asking if she had really passed out on the mountain. But she didn't seem too concerned, just saying that she didn't really remember much. Maru was relieved she didn't remember. In theory, she should have, considering the monster had been right in front of her. Still, he showed her a news report about everything that had happened on the mountain and told her to stay out of dangerous situations from now on. His mother then mentioned that she had heard rumors about someone who looked like his father being seen on the mountain, which was why she had gone to check it out. That was when Maru started connecting the dots. His father had also disappeared on a mountain. Maybe it had something to do with the demons. A memory surfaced. He was in the forest, looking up, face pale with terror, blood dripping from his mouth, barely clinging to life. His father's arm was being devoured. This was the first time he had ever remembered something like that. Then, panic attack incoming. But Jigga Mom snapped him back to reality, asking why he looked so pale. Yeah, working for the government really was exhausting. Still looking a little shaky, he told her not to worry. He was getting used to it. Back at work, someone called out. Officer Maruhan. He had been hiding, trying to keep a low profile, but now he awkwardly stepped forward, greeting everyone. Joan immediately asked him what happened yesterday and why he had disappeared without saying anything. Xiaomu scoffed. Isn't it obvious? The coward got scared and ran away. Instead of explaining that he had left to save his mother, Maru just apologized. Meanwhile, Kang Chana, who somehow kept getting more stunning every day, casually spoke up. He was sick, so I gave him the day off. Maru blinked. Why was she covering for him? She was just staring at him as if silently telling him, "Don't say anything." Juwon sighed and said Kang should have notified them about something like that. Kang apologized. Juwon, however, wasn't letting it slide. You can't just say sorry after making a mistake like that. Before the argument could escalate, the alarm went off. Kang immediately started changing into her gear. She said she was heading out to take down a level 2 demon. Then, out of nowhere, Maru enthusiastically shouted, "I'm going too." The entire room fell silent. A while later, they were hiking up the mountain. On the way, Maru apologized for making her take the blame for his mistake. Kang shrugged. She said she knew he had left because she had been too harsh on him, so it was fine. But why did you come back? Maru was already sweating and out of breath, and they were only halfway up the mountain. Still, he managed to answer. He was here to fight now. Right at that moment, yellow dust started rising. A massive fat creature emerged in the distance. The ground shook. The monster charged straight at them. It was a huge, gray, obese old man, yelling that he was ready to fight. Kang Chana warned them, even though it's level 2, don't underestimate it. After all, an entire mountain team had been wiped out by a mere level 5 demon. Maru knew exactly which one she was talking about, the one he had beaten yesterday. Then Yosiak, the TikToker, casually commented that those guys were lucky HQ had taken care of the monster. The main branch only had level 7 and above users, meaning they were on a completely different level. Maru froze. Should he say it? Should he tell them it was actually him who had killed it? The problem was, he had left early yesterday. He'd have to explain a lot. but he wanted recognition. He wanted them to know he worked hard too. But before he could say anything, Kang asked, "What is that demon doing?" The creature had its hands under its arms, scratching its armpits. Someone yelled for them to step back. Maru suddenly stepped forward and said, "No need, I'll handle this." Kang looked genuinely surprised. Since when does a level 1 user think they can take on a level 2? Maru pointed at himself. "That level 1 user is me." He faced the demon, then slicked back his hair. Time to show how much he had evolved since killing the monster on the mountain. He mimicked the monster's movements, scratching his armpits. "I'm not a useless member of this team anymore." A horrific stench filled the air. The moment the monster sniffed, it screamed and ran away. "That's supposed to be my ability." Even Maru was disgusted by what he had done. Still, he rushed in for a fistfight. "I'm not losing to trash like this." He landed punches right in its stomach, making it stumble. Yoseok, meanwhile, covered his nose, saying this wasn't a fight. It was chemical warfare. Kang-chana was dizzy, barely standing. How could a level 7 be affected this badly? Maru kept flailing his arms, locked in a high-intensity slap battle with the monster. The creature wailed, realizing its own ability was working against it. It vomited, collapsed, and passed out. Maru turned to the others, smiling. "I won, right?" They did not look impressed. Later, they all washed up in the river. Kang-chana, sitting nearby, kept watching Maru. Then she asked, "So you really can absorb demon abilities through gluttony?" Maru nodded, explaining that the last demon he ate had the ability to reflect attacks. Yoseok mocked him. "Oh, so that's what your whole dramatic speech was for? All that build-up for that?" Maru felt a little embarrassed, but Kang just shrugged. "It doesn't matter. You did well. You're improving." Maru blushed, until she ruined the moment by adding, "But honestly, you're still disgusting for having to eat those things." Humiliating. They left soon after, saying they needed to check for more demons. Maru sat there, wondering, why did I have to get stuck with that monster? Why can't I ever look cool? Then someone appeared behind him. "Are you Maru-han?" Maru froze, covering his face. "Who are you?" It was Zhang. He only had one question. "Did you kill the level 5 demon on the mountain?" Considering Maru was supposed to be a level 1 user, this was extremely strange. Maru, feeling awkward, answered yes. Zhang smiled. "I'm here to take you to HQ in Seoul." Maru blinked. "Wait, was this a promotion?" Zhang simply asked. "You know what HQ is, right?" Maru nodded. As far as he knew, it was where the elite worked. So why was he being taken there? Zhang, still smiling like a K-drama protagonist, said, "Because I recognize talent when I see it. Petition for the artist to spend less time drawing this guy and use that extra time on the ones we really care about." Back at headquarters, Yu Young was questioning the director about why he had delayed the meeting. He explained that a new recruit had caught his attention. She immediately asked if he was talking about his son, the kid named Shanwoo. Oh, so that's why I hated that bastard the moment I saw him. He's a nepotism hire." The director explained that the kid hadn't spoken to him since the divorce, but the person he was interested in wasn't him. It was another new recruit. Yu Young raised an eyebrow. "You think the sudden appearance of high-level demons might be related to this recruit?" He nodded. "I have a feeling. Keep an eye on Gangway Island." The scene shifted to another portal of yellow dust. Inside what looked like a house, a small, twisted creature crouched in the shadows. Something that looked like a sickly, mutated gremlin. Back at the police station, Maru was grinning like an idiot, absolutely thrilled that he had been invited to work at headquarters. This was huge. Then reality hit him. If they were calling him there, that meant it was even more dangerous than here. He had to remember, safety first. Right now, he was in a beautifully peaceful workplace. Still, it felt damn good to be recognized by someone at the top of the top. Right then, Samu was staring at him from across the room. "Why have you been walking around with that stupid smile all day?" It was obvious how much this arrogant asshole hated seeing a level 1 weakling enjoying an easy life in this office. But for once, Maru fought back. "You're the incompetent one. You wanted to work at HQ, but you're not there, so you don't have the right to say anything." Samu's face darkened. He stood up, fuming. "Say that again." Like how he was going to sit there and take moral lectures from someone who has the ability of stinky armpits. Maru froze. Who the hell leaked that information? He glanced around. Right as Yoseok started typing away at his computer, pretending to be busy, Maru immediately knew. It was that bastard. Feeling the rage of 1,000 suns, he lunged. Yoseok instantly ran for his life. Meanwhile, Go Deokman was laughing his ass off, and Juwon told everyone to stop bullying Maru. Maru sighed, relieved. "Juwon, you really are a good person." Then she clapped her hands and said, "At least you're not hiding in the bathroom anymore. Now you just stink a little. That's progress." Maru felt his soul leave his body. The embarrassment never ended. To make things worse, he hated how Kang was just indifferent to everything. Even after he helped her that day, he was still seen as useless here. He looked down at Zhang's contact information. Zhang had told him to send a message when he made a decision. Then Kang stood up and announced that a level 2 creature had appeared. Right then, Samu grabbed her arm and said, "I'm going this time." He was bored out of his mind in this office and felt like he was going to explode if he stayed any longer. Then he turned to Maru. "You're coming too. We need to work on team bonding." On the way to the mountain, the two of them were sweating under the brutal sun as they climbed. But when it came to hunting monsters, Xiaomu was more excited than we were when we first saw Kang Chana. Maru, on the other hand, didn't want to spend another second next to this psychopath. He wanted to finish this job and go home. Then Xiaomu stopped and said, "This won't be as easy as you think." Maru followed his gaze. The entire house ahead was covered in yellow dust. Maru figured there must be more than one person inside. But Xiaomu ignored him, walked ahead, and told him to hurry up. The gate creaked open. Maru hesitated, staying at the edge. Something felt wrong. Inside the door, there was way too much yellow dust, enough for there to be a level 4 creature. They walked inside, and Maru muttered that they should turn back. These things could appear out of nowhere. But Xiaomu kept walking forward. Then they reached a green door. Maru knew. The monster was right behind it. Xiaomu turned the handle. Locked. Maru stepped in front of him. "This is dangerous. We don't know what's inside." But Xiaomu had already put on his gloves. "If you don't want to open it, I'll just break it." He twists his pinky to open it. Our boy gets startled, but nothing happens. He's confused while Maru tells him to stop acting all confident when he can't even open a lock. Xiaomu then goes to take a look through the keyhole. Sitting at the back of the room, you can see the scrawny little devil. The protagonist pushed him aside, saying he wanted to take a look too. Seeing him in the corner, and he said the thing looked weak. However, the guy warned that judging by the amount of dust, this creature was at least level 7 or higher. Frightened, our boy wants to know why something that strong is on this island. Xiaomu replies that he has no idea, but now he understands why his heart was racing. For a long time, he's been eager to fight a truly strong monster. Our boy already took off running, saying that Lunatic was going to put both their lives at risk, so it's better to call headquarters right away. However, when he turned the lock, it wasn't opening. He starts slamming his shoulder against it, wanting to know why they can't leave the way they came in. That's when he realizes that, obviously, it must be the work of the demon hiding in the room. Meanwhile, Xiaomu was kicking and punching, trying to force the door open, shouting at the damn recluse to come out so they can fight. Maru, on the other hand, doesn't want to spend even a second against that demon, much less against that psychopath, especially knowing it's a Hikikomori level 7 demon. The blackhead was just standing there, then suddenly started repeating something about being lonely. He kept saying lonely, lonely, while his face began to distort. Looking at his fingers, Xiaomu sees that his entire hand was already broken, yet the door didn't have a scratch on it. What the hell was this thing made of? Meanwhile, Maru is slamming a chair against the window, but unfortunately, even that isn't working. It seems that Lonely Creature's power was creating a trap house. At that moment, his heart starts to tighten. The situation triggers a panic attack, and he wonders if the office people are going to arrive anytime soon. 2 hours pass, and he's already furious, unsure if those bastards just forgot about them. In an office, Diepman yells that they have a problem. Jiwon looks around and says they really forgot about the training date in Busan. Everyone starts flipping through files and working, saying they're about to sort it out. Kang Chana slams the keyboard, gets up, runs, grabs the file, and hands it over to the guy. He thanks everyone for their hard work and says they'll see them tomorrow. Jiwon sits on the couch and says that after hard work, they should enjoy a nice coffee in peace. Everyone relaxes for a second of peace. That's when they all wonder where those two have been for the past 3 hours. She facepalms, saying this is exactly why you shouldn't send a rookie alone. And strangely, she calls them on TikTok and tells Kang Chana and another guy to stay there. Thank God, as beautiful and wonderful as always, thanks to the artist for putting in extra effort, she gets up and says she's going too because she has a bad feeling. She walks past Jiwon, who stares at her and warns that this place was very close to that other place. So is she really going by chance? The girl seems to have some kind of trauma. She just stands up and tells them to hurry. If I had to bet $1 trillion, I'd say her family was killed by demons, and that's why she's so determined to kill them. The scene shifts to the house and everyone is already inside asking where the two are. Through the dust in the background, they see a shadow approaching. It was the desperate fools shouting at them not to let the door close. But it was too late. It shut right in their faces, and the fools wondered why they had barged in like that. Already slumped on the floor, Jiwon wants to know what happened to them. The situation is explained and they stand by the door. They realize that apparently the demon doesn't want to leave. That's when Kang tells everyone to step back, pulls a small arm out from her body, and forms a katana. She slashes at it, but obviously, nothing happens. Yosuke is terrified that even her attack didn't leave a mark. Jiwon then tells them to wait because she'll handle it. She pulls up her jacket sleeve, revealing a small black orb on her arm. A tiny spider appears, and guess what her ability is called? Demon Spider. She tells Minnie to go in, but the lock was too small for her chubby spider, and unfortunately, it didn't work. Our boy watches her consoling the spider and remarks that she seems like the weirdest one so far. Soundwoo then tells TikTok to do something instead of just standing there, but he replies that he has no abilities. Maru takes the opportunity to mock him, saying that he seems completely useless in battle. However, the boy fires back that our guy is the useless one. Where are all those abilities he's been absorbing? Why doesn't he use the needle power to unlock everything? To which our protagonist explains that the creature is too far away, he can't see clearly, and his powers don't reach that far. At that moment, it seemed like everyone was useless. Soundwoo wants to know who's going to save them if there's no one else in the office. Jiwon says the leader won't because he left for training and won't return until tomorrow. Then Yosek reminds them that they still have Kim Yi-bak nearby. The old bespectacled man suddenly appears, scaring everyone. They ask when he got there, he responds that he arrived because no one had come back yet. Everyone is shaken that this weird guy has zero presence, making it impossible to notice when he arrives. He walks up to the lock to take a look, and Jiwon asks if he can handle it. Suddenly, he lies down on the floor and starts taking a nap. Maru thinks to himself that either this guy is extremely calm or has some bizarre ability. Jiwon explains that she has no idea what his ability is because she's never seen him use it. The poor ones are devastated. Everyone who came to save them so far was useless. Jiwon claps her hands and tells them to focus and find a way out together. But Sehun just reminds her that they've already tried everything, so there's no way out. She asks if he's prepared to die without doing anything. TikTok suggests waiting for the leader while our boy bites his nails in fear. In the background, he wonders why Kang was just standing there doing nothing. Something about that was weird. Yosok, however, wants to understand why the demon isn't moving or trying anything against them. That's when, out of nowhere, a tremor shakes everyone. Kang immediately takes off running, saying it came from the main room. She opens the door, takes a look, and it seems like the whole room is moving. The walls and ceiling were coming down, and the house seemed to be shrinking. That's when Seonwoo states that now, the purpose of that lonely Hakisha is obvious. It will keep shrinking and shrinking the space until the house is reduced to just its room. Maru realizes that, given they can't destroy the walls, they're going to be crushed to death. No one has any idea what to do, and our boy desperately needs a solution. Then we see a flashback to 4 years ago, with 2 women gathering plants. A younger, cuter Kang arrives, greeting them with a cheerful hi. And then what might be her sister runs up to hug her. A happy family in the middle of the mountains. You already know this isn't going to end well. The two were clearly very close and talked about growing up together with their grandma. Kang saw a drawing on the wall and told her to stop doing that or she'd get scolded. But her sister replied that it was their happy family portrait. The drawing was right on the wall that was now shrinking. It was in the very house she grew up in, apparently, and at that moment, she activated her mummy power, pulled out a massive sword, and slashed at the wall. But the place kept shrinking and her sword started to crack. She realized she'd have to use more blood and things started getting serious. She was completely wrapped in bandages. Her neck was already turning gray and Jiwon shouted for her to stop because it was getting dangerous. That's when Maru ran in and yanked her out, breaking the sword. She looked devastated and cried as she watched everything disappear. But just in time, Maru managed to pull her out of that room. The girl, however, seemed to have fainted and Jiwon tried to wake her up. Our protagonist already knew she passed out from using too much blood. What he didn't understand was why she went that far just for a wall. That's when Seonwoo revealed that this house belonged to Kang's grandmother, and she lost both her grandma and younger brother while living here. She barely survived alone, and that's when she gained her abilities. Maru now understood why she acted that way and seemed so scared. Yoseok says that, at least for now, the house has stopped shrinking. They would have to find a way out soon before they ran out of rooms. Seeing the small piece that Kang tore from the wall, Jiwon throws out the saying, "Soft water on hard stone keeps hitting until rage." Sometime later, the sounds of attacks echo through the forest. There was Seonwoo, who managed to carve out a tiny hole with his knife and 1,000,000,000 strikes. Everyone had already used up all their energy and couldn't do anything anymore. A knife falls onto Maru's lap and Seonwoo says it's his turn now. He gets up, his arm still in bad shape, dying of thirst. But just as he's about to start, Kang snatches the knife from his hand and says she'll do it. He asks her to rest a little longer, but she insists she's fine. She goes to the wall and starts scraping. Our boy comments that he heard this was her grandmother's house. He found it strange that such an abandoned place was so clean, so she must have been taking care of it. She says it's because she's been waiting for the day the demon that killed her family would return. Maru doesn't understand how she knows the creature will come back one day. She explains that the demon from that time was completely different. A creature with a feminine silhouette emerged from the gate. At that moment, she was so scared she couldn't move. When she looked to the side, another one was approaching. This one had a masculine body, stared at her, and seemed to have awareness and intelligence. They had some purpose beyond just killing people. She knows that if the prophecy comes true, that creature will appear again. Now he understands why she's part of this island's team despite being a level 7 user. She asks if he's disappointed that her reason is something so cliche, but Maru says no. He's there because he couldn't escape, and because the salary is good. She keeps hitting the wall, saying that if that's the case, soon enough, he'll be in Seoul, since the salary here is even better. He asks how she knows, and she explains that she saw Jong talking to him that day. Just as she's about to explain why she's sure he'll do a great job, the whole place starts moving again. Everyone screams for them to head for the hallway and escape the area. During the escape, Maru is curious about what she was going to say. The next morning, the house has already shrunk by half. Everyone is exhausted, wondering if this will ever end. Yoseok says their only chance of getting out alive is the leader, but why isn't he here yet? Meanwhile, Kim Yi-bak is still peacefully sleeping. Our boy is getting fed up, saying that while everyone is struggling to escape, that guy isn't even awake. That's when everything starts shaking again, and our boy says they need to get Kim Yi-bak out of the hallway. But the guy is standing up, covered in fungi, looking like a ghost. Everyone asks what's going on with him, and he replies that he thinks now is the perfect time. Suddenly, the door opens and the creature dashes out, desperate and covered in fungus. Everyone shakes Kim Ye back, demanding to know what he did. He explains that he has the mold fungus demon, but it takes a long time to spread. Everyone starts clapping and praising him, saying he did an amazing job and that he's incredible, while he just looks embarrassed. But Xianwu and Kang remind them to stay focused because they haven't won yet. The demon stood in front of them crying until something appeared from its back. A whole bunch of creatures emerged, staring at them. Turns out the lonely one wasn't so lonely after all. That's what Maru thought as they all leaped to attack. A strange red thread was extending from its back. Kang ordered Yozak to hide everyone. He then activated his Zero Presence ability, which was almost like invisibility. Kang kept moving forward, slicing through the demons. The problem was that the hallway was too narrow, and her sword kept getting stuck in the walls. As soon as that happened, the creatures started crawling along her blade. Just when she thought she was about to get attacked, our boy went straight for a bite to the neck. As he was being devoured, though, he stretched his hand upward and clenched it. The ceiling started to lower, and TikTokers shouted that they were all going to die. But our boy now said no. He revealed the power of the mirror ability. With that, he threw his arms up and commanded the ceiling to stop. His friend praised him, but the demons were still attacking, until one of their heads exploded because Samangu had broken a pinky finger. He even told our boy to stay hidden behind the barrier since he was just a level 1. Maru was about to warn him to be careful, but it was too late. He got bitten on the shoulder, on the arm, on the stomach, a bunch of creatures climbing him. Then, out of nowhere, something white and massive came stabbing through the monsters. Jiwon's little spider was now gigantic. She had her eyes closed, seemingly controlling the beast. Meanwhile, Kang was slicing through the creatures and Seonwoo was breaking them apart one by one. Inside the barrier, Seonwoo and our boy were staring at each other. They started teasing each other, praising their friends, saying they really do work hard, huh? Making fools of themselves in front of everyone. Meanwhile, Jiwon wonders why creatures keep endlessly pouring out of that room. As soon as our boy hears that, he dashes off, saying he's going to handle it now. He asks them to clear a path and Kang and Seonwoo oblige. He manages to get past the monsters and falls into the room. And hidden behind all the Smeagol's, the real one was crouched there. He realizes that this bastard was only fighting using clones. Every time something hit its head, a new one was born. So Maru raises his arms and says that if that's the case, he's bringing the ceiling down and the thing can stay right there. As soon as he did that, he tried to run for the exit, but his power was working too well and the ceiling was coming down way too fast. He saw his friends reach out his arm for help and was barely pulled to safety in time. Now, outside, everyone was celebrating. People were praising his mirror ability, saying it was truly incredible. Meanwhile, Kang looked to the side, remembering the memories she had there with her grandmother and brother. Maru noticed this and then deactivated the mirror ability since it was no longer needed now that the creature was dead. He looked at the creature on the ground and went in to devour it while everyone wondered what he was doing. He had already swallowed one monster before, and he had to be quick to take advantage of the yellow dust still in the air. With that, he activated the creature's ability and started pushing the walls. The problem was that using the power consumed dust, and soon he couldn't move them anymore. Kang then grabbed his arm, told him it was okay, and thanked him. At least what he had managed to restore was enough for the drawing to reappear. Back at the office, Diepman arrives excited, saying that something good is happening today. And that's when he realizes there's no one in the place. He went through the trouble of getting the best bread from Busan, so where was everyone? He looks toward the break room and wonders if those brats are still knocked out in the morning. Right then, he gets a call from Jong and asks what's up. Jong immediately reveals that he called Maru to headquarters, but Maru refused, and he wants to know why. Diepman glances to the side and sees the girls sleeping, looking beautiful and peaceful. Meanwhile, our boy is there sweaty and stinking. His life wasn't perfect yet, but he was adjusting to the team. The next scene cuts and our guy is being completely torn in half. Someone yells at him to run. But now we're going back 7 hours earlier. Now that's what I call a spoiler, folks. Our boy was dying of sleep, complaining that when he was looking for a job, he never imagined making money would be this hard. He was still exhausted from the battle against the demon. Then he heard a car passing by, and of course, it was a Porsche. Obviously, it was Xianwu, the filthy rich millionaire bastard. And our boy, shameless as ever, goes up to him asking for a ride. But Xianwu just speeds off without a word. TikToker appears out of nowhere, commenting on how jealous he is of that bastard who even has an imported car. But it was kind of weird for a public servant to drag something like that to work. Maru agrees, saying that in the end, the guy is just weird. Then Yoseok says that no matter how handsome, rich, or tall the guy is, none of that matters because he has a trash personality and probably doesn't have any friends. The two laugh, but Maru starts thinking he doesn't have any of that and he doesn't have any friends either, so he's just losing in every way. Next scene, they arrive at the office looking drained. Diepman opens his arms, calling our boy an amazing level 7 ability user. He's confused, pushing the boss away, trying to figure out what they're talking about. That's when Ju-won explains that if he ate a level 7 creature and stole its abilities, then now he's level 7. Meanwhile, someone pats him on the back, saying they always thought the kid was just dead weight, but now he's finally useful for something. Our boy blushes, realizing that being recognized by the team feels really nice. Then Yosuke comments that his talent is actually incredible. This is the first time he's seen someone who will just keep getting stronger. Suddenly, Seomu slams the table. He says the workday has already started, so they need to stop chatting. Our poor boy realizes that this bastard hates him for no reason. Just because he was humiliated before for being level 1, now he has to suffer for it. Right then, Miss Gorgeous taps his shoulder and asks if they can talk for a bit. Now outside, sitting on a bench, he asks what's up. She says she just wanted to thank him for what happened at her grandmother's house yesterday. He awkwardly scratches his head, saying that they're a team, so it was only natural. But suddenly, she turns and says that after that incident, she's sure about how she feels about him. Our boy blushes hard, wondering what's coming next. And then she says she's sure he's not a level 1 ability user. What a tragedy. I thought it was going to be something good. He asks her to explain, and she says there's no way he could have recovered so well with a level 1 power. He remembers the chubby creature he first bit and is sure that one was level 1. But then Kang asks if, by any chance, he saw another demon before he started working here. He thinks for a moment, saying there's no way he'd forget something that important. And that's when he notices smoke behind her. Immediately, a panic attack kicks in, and a black claw appears. A humanoid wolf stares at him, drooling, and his heart starts pounding. He drops his can, and she asks what's wrong. He tells her not to worry. It's just that sometimes his mind makes up scary things. But she calls his bluff, grabs his hand, and tells him not to worry because he's safe with her around. I wish I was safe too. And now she's sure there's definitely something in this guy's past. That's when Deokman appears, asking if they're done with their little office date. Completely flustered, he says no, they don't have that kind of relationship. And Kang just casually says that in a year, there will be rain and demons in this place, so relationships only can make sense. She's not even considering anything like that. Her words hit him harder than a level 10 demon's attack. That blow was brutal. Now he's just lying dead on the bench. Deokman teases him, and our boy tries to defend himself, saying he already explained. It's not like that. At the same time, though, he really did feel sad about those words, didn't he, folks? Some time passes, and Ju-won mentions that before they leave, they should check the alerts. Meanwhile, Kang and our boy are climbing the mountains. Ever since that conversation on the bench, he's felt weird being around her. Kang reaches the meter and starts taking notes on the yellow dust. Maru, on the other hand, is now convinced he really doesn't have time for relationships, since everything is going to end in a year. Both of them are lost in thought, thinking that they need to find a way to kill these damn demons. When suddenly, the phone starts ringing. It's a distress call from Zone 3, and Yosuke is the one speaking. He says that Leader Deokman has already been defeated, and that the creature is heading their way. He warns them to be careful with their words, and then all of a sudden, the call seems to cut out. Kang says this is concerning. Deokman is a level 10 ability user, and he was defeated. Maru, however, is shocked. That lazy guy is a level 10 user. The yellow dust starts appearing, and she warns him to be careful. The demon that was coming was completely different from any they had faced before. Its silhouette appears, the two of them brace themselves, and then a thin creature in a kimono emerges in front of them. The monster blinks a single eye that catches both of them off guard. It greets them, saying it's a pleasure to meet humans, and asks if they can have a little chat. It says it's interested in talking to the one who runs things here. Maru is stunned. Not only can this thing speak, but it communicates exactly like a person. Kang tells him to stay alert, but the monster asks them not to be hostile. It claims it doesn't want to fight. It's only here to have a conversation. Maru doesn't understand what kind of conversation it means, but he remembers that Yosuke warned them not to talk to the creature. Yet our protagonist ignores that warning and thinks this might be a good chance to gather information. So he asks where the creature is from. It replies that it comes from Naraka. Maru has no idea where that is, so the demon explains it's the deepest part of hell. Those who committed grave sins in their existence are imprisoned in that place, trapped in infinite darkness, and forced to fight forever. Maru starts to piece things together and asks if that means, yes, every demon that exists here was once human. Our boy suddenly remembers himself eating the creatures, which means he's been eating people. He starts vomiting immediately. The demon then says it's its turn to ask a question. Maru shudders for a second, but Kang grabs his arm and tells him to stop talking. Even if the demon seems friendly on the surface, she's sure this is the one that took down their leader. She's already prepared a giant spear, but the demon tells her to stop, that it doesn't like violence. She doesn't hesitate though and lunges forward, ready to attack. It smiles and warns her that killing it now won't bring her brother back. She freezes in shock as it effortlessly redirects her spear with just a finger. Then it tells her it was her fault for being too weak and letting her brother die. That's when a memory floods back, the moment her brother stepped in front to protect her. Damn, he even looked a lot like our boy. With his chest pierced, he told her to run and collapse into her arms. She had sobbed desperately. And now, back in the present, she has no idea how this creature knows that. The demon says that as his older sister, it was her responsibility to protect him. But still, the little boy ended up dying. Maru calls out to Kang and rushes to catch her in his arms. Wait, where did all this blood come from? He hadn't even noticed anything happening. Maru realizes that this thing can probably attack people psychologically. And now they're screwed because if anyone has a weak mental state, it's our protagonist. The demon then says they can continue their conversation and leave that pathetic human aside. But Maru tells him no and orders the monster to shut its filthy mouth. Then he launches himself at the demon, saying he won't let it talk about her like that. He punches it right in the head, smashing it into a rock. The demon is still fixing its teeth when Maru is already coming in for a second blow. Then the monster suddenly laughs and says, "So that's how he's acting, huh? But didn't he just get rejected by her?" Out of nowhere, Maru freezes, stopping in his tracks like something had struck his heart. He stutters. That doesn't make sense. He's never been rejected before. That kind of thing shouldn't affect him. So why does he suddenly feel dizzy? He doesn't have any romantic feelings for her. He just thinks she's a strong and cool senior. Meanwhile, she's still on the ground, apologizing. For a moment, he pauses, but then the pain in his chest gets worse, and he coughs up a pool of blood. The demon picks up a rock and says it hates emotions because emotions are things for weak people. Even back when it was human, it never felt anything like that. It moves closer to Maru and asks, why isn't he answering? Did a cat cut out his tongue? Now Maru finally understands why even a level 10 ability user couldn't defeat this thing. The demon tosses the rock into the air and says it's time to end this since the boy can't even speak. As the rock comes down to finish him, Maru thinks, unless someone with a cold, emotionless heart shows up, there's no way he'll be saved. The rock is about to crush him when suddenly, the demon's whole body contorts violently. The emotionless bastard finally appears, demanding to know why a level 1 is lying on the ground. Our boy grins, saying he's never been so happy to see a sociopath. But the guy is already irritated, asking why this damn fool is smiling at him like that out of nowhere. Then Xiaomu hears the demon mutter, "Huh, that one actually tickled a little." The creature adjusts its head, saying that its vocal cords are quite hard to break, especially considering how low their level is. Now was attacking their egos, and both of them were ready to beat the hell out of this loudmouth. They stood face to face with the monster, and our boy warned Xiaomu to be careful since that bastard used psychological attacks. But Xiaomu just told him to watch, had shown him how to handle it. Obviously, our boy was pissed and wanted to kill this bastard himself, but he had no choice. They had to deal with this. Xiaomu broke another finger, and with that, a piece of the demon's body shattered. The demon immediately took advantage of the wound and taunted him. If that was all he had, he would never earn his father's approval. But nothing happened. Xiaomu just kept breaking fingers and attacking the monster. The creature chuckled, saying that apparently this guy was emotionless, just like him. That's what happens when you're the son of a woman who took her own life after being abandoned by her husband. Damn. Now King Xiaomu's tragic backstory, explaining why the guy was so messed up. Obviously, Maru had no idea about this. He had thought the guy was just some spoiled rich kid. Even someone as cold as him wouldn't be able to handle a psychological attack like that. But then Maru froze. Xiaomu was laughing. The bastard asked what that had to do with anything. It wasn't his fault. It was his mother's for being too weak. Then he struck the demon's neck and said that in this world, only the strong survive. The monster grinned and said that if that was the case, then Xiaomu wouldn't last long, because he was much weaker than Maru. Now that psychological attack actually worked. But our boy jumped in the way and blocked the strike, saying he had figured out the pattern. The monster disorients people with psychological attacks and then launches a blade from its mouth. Right then, Kang swooped in and sliced off the creature's tongue, making it writhe in pain. She asked if Maru was okay, and our boy was in love, thinking, as expected, she's amazing. I'm right there with him, falling for her just like this fool. But he shook it off, telling himself to focus on the fight. He grabbed Xiaomu and shook him, trying to snap him out of his daze. But damn, that hit about him being weaker than Maru really got to him. On the other hand, our boy was proud that someone like Xiaomu was jealous of him. But then he stepped on the guy and told him to get over it. It wasn't that bad being worse than him. He might be super cool, but for now, Xiaomu was still cooler than him. Suddenly, Xiaomu snapped back and scoffed, saying, obviously, after all, you're still a trash level 1. The three of them then turned to face the boss, knowing they had to kill it before nightfall. Otherwise, they'd be at a disadvantage. Maru wondered how they were supposed to do that. If he got too close, a monster would use its tongue. But Kang said this was the perfect time since for now it couldn't talk. However, Xiaomu immediately objected, saying she wasn't in any condition to fight. The wound on her chest wasn't healing. At that moment, Maru bolted to the side, thinking he needed to find a way to deal with this monster. He started waving his arms, calling the monster an idiot and telling it he was right there. The creature turned to him. That was the opening he had been waiting for. He told Xiaomu to take care of Kang while he used the new power he had received. But his friend was confused. After all, his power only worked in closed spaces. Kang immediately shouted at Xiaomu would help Maru before he got himself killed doing something stupid. Meanwhile, our boy was sprinting for his life, with the monster right behind him, its tongue flailing everywhere. He was scanning his surroundings, looking for an enclosed space. But unfortunately, there weren't any buildings around. Just as he was trying to figure out a solution, a car sped past him. There was Xianwu, who slammed on the brakes and told him to get in. Without hesitation, Maru leaped toward the car, furious that this bastard was risking such an expensive ride. Typical rich kid behavior. Our boy was jealous of this damn billionaire. He landed through the sunroof, already opening the door as the monster closed in from behind. The creature aimed a deadly attack at the car while Maru screamed that Xianwu could get inside. But this was actually a trap. The monster lunged in and Xianwu locked it inside. He told Maru the plan was working. Maru was about to jump out again, thinking everything was set. But then, the scene from the start played out, and our boy was sliced into 36 pieces. The monster grinned as it crawled out of the car, satisfied that it had killed him. But then, a hand grabbed its neck. The creature looked back and understood Maru. That's when we see what really happened. The moment he got in the car, Maru had activated his clone ability. Now, multiple Muras were attacking the monster, grabbing it from all sides and pulling it back inside while devouring it. The monster shrieked in agony, desperately searching for the real one, who was hidden in the back. Xianwu was banging on the window, demanding to know why the bastard wasn't getting out. Then Kang arrived, asking where Maru was. As it was being consumed, the monster wheezed that this wasn't necessary. They could just sit down and talk for a bit. Or was Maru just naturally violent, just like his father? And then, the psychological attack hit. Maru was suddenly dragged into a memory, tears in his eyes. His father lifting him by the collar, yelling at him to stop. Stop what? The monster asked him. How did he feel when his father disappeared without a word? Maru didn't want to hear any of this. He slammed his own ears to make himself go deaf. With blood gushing from his ears, he told the monster to stop playing with people's emotions. The creature seemed to be moving its mouth, trying to get him to read its lips. But he just scowled and said its attacks meant nothing if he couldn't understand what was being said. With that, he clenched his fists and the ceiling began to collapse. Outside, Kang tried to stop it, but Xianwu grabbed her arms, telling her there was nothing they could do. The car kept shaking violently. Our boy had turned into a red puddle. At that moment, Kang realized the yellow dust was disappearing. The car was completely flattened, and she stepped forward, saying they had to save Maru. Xianwu, already ready to give up, said that the kid had been dead for a while now. But Kang insisted, as long as there was still yellow dust in the air, there was a chance to save him. She tore pieces of the car apart, demanding to know why this idiot crushed himself like that. They heard fate knocking, and Xianwu immediately jumped in to help, wondering the same thing. Meanwhile, our boy was somewhere else entirely. He had no idea where he was. It was like he couldn't even feel his own body. At least he hoped he had managed to take that damn loudmouth down. Then he tried to recall the creature's last mouth movements. It had warned him. The abyss was searching for him, and he needed to remember the call. Losing consciousness, he wondered, what the hell is this call thing? Suddenly, the monster screamed at him to wake up. His eyes snapped open, and he found himself in a red place. His clothes began writhing. A hand emerged from his stomach. And then, that same black furry dog started crawling out of him. Maru, clearly not in the best shape, demanded to know what the hell that thing was. The monster stepped up to him and asked, "Do you remember?" Flashback, back when he was a child, when he first saw that creature. The monster had stared at both him and his father. Maru, terrified, had told his dad, "This is weird, we should run." But his father grabbed him by the collar and said no. From that day forward, they were going to fight. Crying, Maru had begged to know why. That was when his father told him, because they needed to obtain that bastard's unique ability. He had dragged his son along, saying they were now heading for the abyss. Then he threw the boy in front of the beast. The moment it raised its head, Maru was seconds away from being devoured. Back to the present. Samu was breaking fingers again, using what little yellow dust remained to tear apart the crushed car. After nearly gutting the whole thing at the very bottom, there was Maru, wrapped in blood-red, vacuum-sealed like a corpse. Staying him, Samu declared there was no more dust. He couldn't recover. He looked to the side, knowing that the kid had no more hope. Meanwhile, Kang was grabbing Maru's hand, asking if he could hear her. Suddenly, his finger twitched. That's when the two of them realized it. Just like a demon, Maru was producing his own yellow dust. His broken bones began spinning, twisting, realigning, and the kid stood up. Both of them were horrified. He had almost completely recovered on his own, but then he lost consciousness and collapsed face first onto the ground. They stared at his body, and Xianwu immediately started stomping on him, demanding to know what the hell he was. Maru, still barely alive, was groaning, wondering why he was getting his ass kicked. Xianwu grabbed him by the collar, shouting, how was he producing his own yellow dust? In theory, the only power he had was gluttony. That's when it hit Maru. Gluttony wasn't the first power he had ever received. It was that monster's power. When he was younger, his father had forced him to take that creature's ability, and he still had no idea why. And here it comes, panic attack. He collapsed to the ground while Sanwoo asked him what was wrong. Kang, the only one with some decency, told Sanwoo to give him a break. He was still recovering. Besides, for now, they should keep this a secret between just the three of them. Sanwoo refused, saying it was crazy to let a monster like him run free. Everyone needed to know, including headquarters. But Kang countered. Maru himself didn't even seem to realize he had yellow dust. Still, Sanwoo insisted. What if he turned into a dangerous demon? Kang simply replied, She trusted Han Maru. She believed he wouldn't do anything dangerous. Xiaomu looked back, then scoffed. Fine. He didn't care what happened to the brat. With that, he walked off. And now Kang realized that all of the responsibility had fallen onto her. On the train home, work was way more exhausting than our boy thought. He was trying to figure out what the hell was this gluttony power and what was that monster. Right then, the monster appeared in the window reflection staring at him. Maru jumped in fear. Yosok, sitting beside him, told him to quit acting weird. Maru clutched his chest, saying he just saw something strange. Then he asked did Yosok want to hear about some of his problems. Yosok, without hesitation, said, not even a little. He said it was better if they just stayed out of each other's lives. Maru sat there dejected, realizing no one at work gave a damn about him. Meanwhile, TikToker got a call from some guy named Kim Wooju, and he wanted to know why. Scene change, bar izakaya. Kim Wooju was telling someone to leave the Gae Mountain group and request a transfer. A chubby guy hesitated, but eventually said okay. But then he asked, who was that person sitting next to him? It was our boy, Hanmaru. Even Yosok wanted to know, since when the hell was he invited? But the poor guy said that his life was really tough too, and he didn't want to be alone. He then turned to Kim Wooju and mentioned that it was the first time he had met someone from another team, asking why he wanted to leave that place. Wooju explained that it was because of all the arguments and problems there. Yosok said that it seemed more like a one-sided case of bullying. Our boy then wanted to know if this was that legendary office bullying he had heard so much about. TikToker agreed, saying that Wooju was just too nice of a person. He should have just caused a mess and then left, exactly like he did. Maru admitted that he didn't know about this since he came from another group. That's when Wooju revealed that Yosok was the one who got beaten up and bullied the most. Now our boy was feeling uneasy, wondering what kind of people were in that group. Yosok explained that the personalities of those guys were closer to humans. Even within the public servants responsible for demon extermination, there were people more dangerous than the actual targets. Maru remembered when Seonwoo said that he could end up becoming more dangerous than a monster and started wondering if he was one of those people. On the way home, he was driving the chubby guy along, asking if they were still far away. That's when they arrived at Wooju's parents' Raymond's shop, and he told them to come inside. But then his expression changed when he saw all of the guy's friends. The poor guy froze, turned around, and immediately crashed into someone else. The 3.98-meter law-abiding citizen said he had come looking for Wooju, but look at that, he had found Yosok too. Then, without hesitation, he kicked him in the chest and stomped on his head, saying that if he was going to transfer out, he should have left peacefully. His biggest mistake was setting fire to the place before escaping. He was stomping the hell out of the guy until our boy grabbed his arm and told him to cut it out. Obviously, the guy turned and asked who the hell he was. Our boy, his eyes glowing, said that he worked with Yosok at the office. The guy laughed, saying that it seemed like he was from Ganwat Island, where only idiots and weirdos ended up. Then, without warning, he blasted Maru in the face. Our boy was flattened on the ground, while the guy went right back to kicking the crap out of Yosok. Poor Yosok had taken more of a beating from these people than he had from that demon in the house. Maru got up, hoping no one would notice his nose was bleeding, but there was yellow dust in his mouth. The whole place was turning yellow, and our boy was not happy. Meanwhile, the other guy kept punching Yosok in the face, blaming him for forcing him into months of rehabilitation. Damn, poor TikToker was choking, crying, getting wrecked, poor thing. And his oh-so-great friends in the back just stood there, saying they never imagined he would transfer to Ganwat Island. That's when the beast rose from behind them. The door swung open, the guy turned around, and a massive foot slammed right into his face. The bastard smashed his head against the wall, collapsed like a rag doll, and everyone was wondering, who the hell was that? It was Shanwoo, and he simply said that he too was a member of Ganwat Island. Then he walked over to Maru and told him if he kept messing around like this, he was going to get himself killed. Maru immediately hid the sand and asked why he was even there. Shamu replied that he had followed him just in case he caused trouble. On the train, he had also noticed that our beloved Kang Chana had been secretly following Maru, and now she had just arrived at the shop demanding to know what the hell was going on here. She walked over to poor, destroyed TikToker and asked if he was okay. She told them that they were lucky. She was taking him out of here. But then the military huntress spoke up, saying that her friend was half dead too, so she wasn't leaving easily. The trembling nerd muttered that Seonwoo had also caused him trouble, so he was here to settle the score. Kang sighed, saying that apparently they wanted to get disciplined again. Just as the woman was about to say that this time things wouldn't go their way, then Wusslehead stood back up. He looked at Seonwoo and declared, "Today, you're gonna die." He charged in for a punch, but Seonwoo grinned and said, "I'm looking forward to it." The brawl was about to begin and Mamoru was standing to the side, completely lost on what to do. He was about to jump in, but Kang told him to stay out of it. If he transformed, things could get dangerous. He needed to be careful. It seemed like she'd had taken his shirt as she passed by and shifted it slightly. Poor Seonwoo, now it was his turn to get his ass kicked. The guy came in with a chair, yelling that today was the day Seonwoo died. But a cannon strike came out of nowhere, nailing the bastard right in the ribs. Armed with a broom, Kang had immobilized the first guy and smashed the second one in the shin. The trembling nerd was rolling on the floor in pain while she warned them. They better stop this or things would end badly for them. That's when an older man appeared, asking why they were fighting civilians while he was just in the bathroom. Kang asked who he was, and the guy introduced himself. He was the leader of Guyang Mountain. Kang seemed relieved and was about to explain what had happened. But if I had to bet $1 billion, that guy was way worse than the three on the floor. And yep, that's exactly what happened. He punched her straight in the face. Dude, you don't do that. You want to die. I'm about to enter this story and kill you myself, you little piece of trash. This bastard. I'm writing his name in my death note. Then he even had the audacity to warn her. She wasn't a civilian, so she shouldn't be hitting his kids. Then he looked at Xianwu completely beat up and smirked. It's been a while since we last saw each other. Maru looked to the side, saw Kang beaten to the ground, and immediately began absorbing the yellow dust. There was no way in hell he was going to let these guys beat up his crush like that. Xianwu told him to stop because it was crazy, but too late. Maru was already charging toward their leader. The man didn't seem too phased, wondering what the kid thought he was going to do. Then he took a direct hit to the face, spun across the room, and had his head blown apart. Our boy stood there, inhaling and exhaling yellow dust. Everyone was in shock. Xianwu already knew. This just made everything way worse. Meanwhile, Maru was trying to help Kang up. She weakly told him that she told him not to use that dust, but he simply apologized. He got angry seeing her get beaten up and wanted revenge. While slumped against the wall, the lunatic leader started laughing. The worst part, he was also absorbing the yellow dust. He muttered that it was impressive. A human who wasn't a demon, it could release this dust. He stepped right up to Maru and said he was curious to know what he really was. Then he asked if Maru wanted to join his team. Maru immediately recalled that this guy's group was filled with people worse than demons, and he flat out told the bastard he would never join a team full of trash. The leader didn't seem too bothered and just sighed, saying that was a shame. Too bad, because now he wasn't going to let Maru walk away so easily. Now that there was plenty of yellow dust around, maybe they should settle this with a fight. Gye Mountain versus Gangwon Mountain. After all, fighting only demons got boring sometimes. But Maru could already see his entire group was starting to transform like a bunch of psychopaths. The leader sat down, chewing on some seaweed. At least, that's what it looked like. Then he said it was time to start the competition. Kang was completely against this, but he ignored her and explained the rules. It would be a 3 versus 3 fight. Whoever won got to keep Yosiak. If they won, they would forget everything he did back at the office. And they would also forget about the boy with the demon's power. After all, Maru should already know. If headquarters found out about this, there was no way they'd let him run free. So it was in his best interest to fight, to keep things quiet. Kang could already tell this bastard wasn't even listening to her. Xianwu asked why they didn't just take the leader out immediately. Kang explained that it would be chaos as people would try to defend him, and it would turn into an all-out brawl. Then their leader smirked and told them to think of this as a friendly competition. Whoever surrendered first would lose. But no killing, because killing was for bad people. Xianwu and Maru exchanged looks. This guy had no idea what he was even saying. Xianwu took off his cap, slipped on his gloves, and said he'd been looking forward to fighting a human with abilities. Maru told him he was crazy, but Kang actually agreed. They should just fight. For now, they just needed to buy as much time as possible. Both of them asked why, but she simply said they'd understand later. Then, she asked who was going first. Xianwu stepped forward, saying he was tired of just watching. The leader asked who would fight from their side. And at that moment, Trembling Nerd took off his glasses. He stared at Xianwu and saw the monster trapped in his eye. Then, he explained, Xianwu's ability allowed him to break his own body to attack his opponent. The 5-meter giant stepped forward, saying he would handle it. He prepped his attack, fired a bunch of weird tree-like branches at Xianwu, and shouted that he wanted to rip him apart. Xianwu barely reacted. He simply broke a finger, shattered the guy's attack, and asked, "That's it." Then he grinned like a psychopath and added, "Of course not." The parts of his body he had already broken were still under his control. In the blink of an eye, his opponent transformed the battlefield into a coffin. Now Xianwu was completely immobilized. And if he couldn't break his body, how was he supposed to fight back? The opponent raised a fist and aimed straight for his eye, saying, "Now you die." But Xianwu grinned and replied, "There's still a lot left to break." Then he bit down on his own teeth, snapped one in half, and shattered the guy's entire attack. In the same instant, he grabbed his opponent by the neck and whispered, "Now you're going to learn what it's like to have your 5th vertebra snapped." Damn, the guy's legs buckled immediately. Xianwu told him to stay on his feet and not pass out so quickly. The next move was going to be a neck fracture. The guy was foaming at the mouth. Right then, Kang grabbed Sinwu's hand and warned him, "At this rate, you're going to kill him." And just like that, round 1 was over. They had won. The 3-meter giant had done nothing but get his ass kicked. Now he was vomiting on the ground like an idiot. The leader asked if they could move on to the next match. Kang told Sanwu that he overdid it. He barely stalled for time. She stepped forward and told them to send in the next fighter. The other side examined her and noted that she had the ability to turn her blood into blades. Xianwu and Maru exchanged a look. A fight between hot girls never has a loser. Then the opponent ripped out 2 chunks of her own ribs and prepped for battle. Kang warned that they shouldn't use knives. It was too dangerous. But the heir to Kimaro's bloodline summoned an army of bones, climbed on top of a skeletal spider, and declared that she didn't care. Then she launched herself at Kang. She barely had time to react. She only managed to form a small sword for her first defense. Then, the skeletal spider rammed her straight in the ribs. Damn. 10 seconds into the fight, Kang already admitted, "I can't keep up with this." She slashed at her opponent, making the woman recoil backward, and immediately advanced again. Kimaro tried to launch some attacks, but Kang dodged them with ease, planning to land a light cut and retreat. The problem was that, damn, the light cut she made turned into a whole pool of blood. The guys from the other team started calling for Officer Park, asking if she was okay. Kang tried to apologize, saying she couldn't control it properly. Seonwoo and our boy congratulated her. She really managed to buy a lot of time. She, embarrassed, admitted that this was her first time fighting a human. The opposing team members started leaving, while the guy with the eye ability was standing there in shock, wondering what kind of insane place this was. He had heard that Gangwa Island was full of weaklings, but their leader remained, saying that now only Hanmaru was left. Kang pointed out that it made no sense. It was already 2-0, they had already won. But the guy revealed that this whole idiotic competition was just because he wanted to see Maru's powers. And besides, his fight was the most important one. It was worth 3 points. Kang wanted to refuse, but the fool stepped forward and said, "Fine, 3 points it is." But he wanted to fight the leader of the other team. Everyone thought he was an idiot, while the leader just smiled. That's when Trembling Nerd decided to check out Maru's power. The demon appeared inside his eye, and he immediately started bleeding. The poor guy broke into a cold sweat, asking if that damn thing was really human. And our boy was just standing there, lost in the abyss of hell. The leader walked up to Maru and said that challenging the judge was cheating. He would rather send in his team's best fighter. Then he called up poor Wooju. He asked about Wooju's parents, and the leader assured him they were safe at home. Then he shoved the chubby guy forward and ordered them to fight. Yosuk shouted for the leader to stop this, but the guy told him to shut up, they would deal with him later. Then the leader told Wooju that if he fought well, he would let him transfer out. Now standing face to face, Maru was completely confused. He could see the head of that psychological demon looming behind Wooju. It was showing him everything he should say to break the poor guy's mind. From mild phrases like, "You deserve to die," to brutal ones like, "You can't even look that girl in the eye." And he could also see memories. Wooju crying, dumping coffee on Yosuk's head. His mouth suddenly started opening, and he felt the blade forming inside. He tried to stop it, but it just kept coming out. Even covering his mouth, he found himself asking, "Aren't you happy, Wooju? At least Yosuk got bullied instead of you." He probably watched him suffer every day and thought he was lucky. Damn, his power was completely out of control. The tongue still slashed across Wooju's heart. Our boy rushed over, trying to help the poor guy. But Wooju just whispered, "I'm sorry," before Maru could even understand why. Wooju's body exploded in a venomous burst. Maru's entire body started melting, his flesh was burning away. Kang called out to him, but the leader warned her not to interfere. The round wasn't over yet. He walked up to Maru, wanting to see how long he would last. He crouched down and mocked him. Soon, his organs would start to melt. He told him he might as well surrender. But even with half his face burned away, Maru muttered, "I haven't given up yet." The leader smirked and said he wanted to see another one of his powers then. All he had to do was attack the chubby guy on the ground and he would win. That was the rule. But then Maru said he didn't care about the rules anymore. He lunged to punch the leader, saying that if he killed him, then they won. He was face to face with him when the leader simply said, "Unfortunately, that's not going to happen." He grabbed Maru by the collar and ordered him to follow the rules. He repeated it 8 times, and in the same instant, the entire room was slammed into the ground. Seonwoo gasped, wondering what power was creating this crushing force. Even he was struggling to breathe. Seonwoo, panting, muttered for them to breathe carefully. Because this was the leader's ability. A level 9 user, with the power of gravity. Looking down on all of them, he smiled and said, "This is such a beautiful sight." Now that they were all pinned to the floor, things were finally getting fun. He glanced at our boy, noticing he had already recovered. Then he said, something was wrong with this kid's body. He decided to test him, and increase the gravity only on Maru. With that, our boy's ribs started snapping apart. But honestly, after that car scene, this was nothing. However, the leader noticed something. The more pain Maru suffered, the denser the yellow dust became. It seemed that the demon he had gained his powers from was very special. That triggered a memory. That monster had been haunting him. Even though it was a demon, its eyes were different from the others. Our boy was struggling to push himself up, barely managing push-ups under the pressure. He was basically in a Goku training montage. Then he decided to use the power of language to mess with this guy. But there were no words written on his back. It seemed like there was no way to mentally break this psycho. At that moment, the leader pulled out a knife. He said he hated being curious, which is why he wanted to dissect Maru. Maybe remove his lungs, or maybe his throat. But the mech shattered, because Seonwoo broke a finger and ordered Maru to go for him. Right then, Kang slashed the leader's arm, leaped into the air and pulled off an affirmative style jump straight at him. But the leader activated 20x gravity, and in an instant, everyone was slammed into the ground, writhing in pain. The leader said that with the gravity increased so many times, he would run out of oxygen and pass out soon. Maru called out for Kang, but the guy just ripped the knife from her hand and said that now no one would get in their way. It was time for them to continue playing. Poor Maru couldn't see any way out of this. This weirdo's powers seemed to work in a way that the more he tightened the noose around his own neck, the stronger the gravity became. Yeah, this guy was definitely a lunatic. At that moment, someone knocked on the door, and he said they were closed for the day. But then the strange blue puddle started seeping under the door, spreading across the floor. Seonwoo's hand pressed against the ground, asked what the hell that weird stuff was. Kang just smirked and said that he finally arrived. When the fight started and she left with Yosuk, she had sent a message to the big boss. Our Hawaiian shirt-wearing boss, Go Diekman, was standing at the door, bleeding from one eye. His ability was the Demon of Darkness. And when something has darkness in the name, you already know it's overpowered. Our boy was sinking into the pool of darkness, while the other guy, completely covered in the sticky liquid, was suddenly submerged as well. Maru quickly realized that he seemed to be in complete darkness, but something was off. He stood up, noticing that he couldn't hear or smell anything. There was no sound. It was as if he himself didn't exist. The gravity guy was trying to understand what happened, until Diepman appeared right behind him and grabbed his throat. Apparently, his gravity was useless here. In an instant, he passed out on the floor. Then Diepman turned to our boy, who was still struggling and calling for help. He grabbed Maru's throat as well and knocked him out cold. Then he casually reached into his pocket, pulled out his two missing eyes, and popped them back into his face. The darkness started fading, and everyone was back in reality. Diepman simply commented that the yellow dust had finally stopped. Kang sighed and said he finally arrived, but Diekman ignored her and got straight to the point. He demanded to know why she and Seonwoo didn't report Maru's powers. Apparently, they were tired of working as public servants. Kang apologized and asked if he could at least talk to the other team's leader. But Diepman immediately shut that idea down, saying that now that things had escalated this far, it wasn't going to be resolved so easily. Scene change, a massive building, and everyone was staring at our boy, who was chained to a chair. He was wondering what was going to happen to him now. Inside a room with 88 chairs but only 4 people sitting, Young spoke up, saying that from now on, they would be in charge of Han Maru. Damn, but Diepman immediately responded that he didn't accept that. Maru had no idea this guy had so much authority. Young slammed the table, saying that Maru was producing yellow dust. Someone like that was extremely dangerous. Other people could end up seeing those demonic powers. But Diekman, adjusting his Hawaiian tie, argued that this whole incident only happened because of that other team. That team was full of horrible people, and Jong knew that better than anyone. Jong should be the one taking responsibility for that psychopath-filled squad. Yu Young said Diekman was taking things too far, but Jong simply told her to be quiet. The truth was, Jong didn't care about the personalities of the people working under him. He didn't care if they were from Gyeong Mountain or if their leader was a psychopath. They were still necessary for fighting demons. At least those lunatics were better than the Gangwa Island leader, a level 10 ability user who didn't even like to fight. Diepman just accepted the criticism and said that Maru also didn't like to fight, which was exactly why he needed to stay on the island. Besides, the 2 people next to him were the ones who could control his personality the best, since they were his friends. Jong asked if Diepman was willing to take responsibility if Maru caused a disaster. Diepman simply stood up, said yes, and walked toward the door. As they were leaving, someone called for Seonwoo and told him to stay behind for a moment. Yeah, no shot. The poor guy was about to get a father-son talk. Outside, Maru asked how things went. And like me, he also complained about Diepman's ridiculous tie. Diepman just informed them that they would be receiving disciplinary actions and that their salaries would be cut. And just like that, Maru's fun was over. He cried his heart out, but Diepman told him he was lucky that those guys from the other island had caused all of this. If he screwed up like this again, there would be no saving him. That director Jung was way more terrifying than he had imagined. Back to Seonwoo, Jung asked his son if he would be able to kill Han Maru if he ever lost control. Seonwoo took a second, turned his head in an awkward way and said no. Then he stood up and said, if that was what Jung had to say after 20 years, he was leaving. But Jung told him to sit down. This wasn't a father-son conversation. It was an order from the director. Maru was no longer someone who could be considered a normal ability user. A human who could produce yellow dust was no different from a demon. They needed to be cautious because maybe he was the enemy. Scene change, a different house. This was going to be the new dorm for Gangwa's team. The place was a mess, clothes everywhere, empty soda bottles rolling around. Maru walked in just as the leader said that from now on, he was going to live there with him. Maru was already terrified about where the guy's hand was resting. He asked if he really had to stay there. Diekman told him, yes. It was the only way for him to keep an eye on him and make sure he didn't cause problems. Then he placed a hand on Maru's shoulder, and that gave our boy instant trauma. Diepman smiled and said that from now on, they would be spending 24 hours very close to each other. Back at base, Hyewon was staring at him, watching him burn. He stood there, all twisted up, and asked if she had anything to say. She warned him that he would die if he started releasing yellow dust there in the office. Yosuk said they should stop messing with the kid because this was exactly the kind of situation that made the dust start rising. Maru was just standing there, pissed off, unsure who he hated more. As soon as he let out his sigh, Kim Yibak asked if he had just started releasing dust. Dyukman immediately grabbed his face, saying he wanted to take a look. Yeah, this scene looked peculiar. Normally, I'd only see this kind of framing in healthier types of stories. Walking through the hallways, Maru was fuming. He was now being treated like a monster. Along the way, he ran right into Sunwoo, who was still thinking about what Jong he had said. That Maru was extremely dangerous, and maybe even an enemy. On the other hand, our boy was already getting pissed off and asked if he was just another person here to tell him not to cause trouble. But Sunwoo just shrugged and said he didn't care about him. That pissed Maru off even more. This bastard always knew how to get under his skin. That's when he noticed Kim Wooju had transferred to their office. Kang said that since it was his first day, he could ask if he was curious about anything. Then Kang turned to our boy and said she wanted to take a look at his eyes. He stiffened up, saying he wasn't releasing any dust, so there was nothing to worry about. But up close, so beautiful, she told him not to be mad about how the team was acting. Everyone was feeling insecure because they wouldn't be able to protect the island if another disaster like this happened. He stood there, awkward and stiff, saying he knew that. Now sitting alone in the office, he was miserable. He had to work more than everyone else. Dyukman's way of handling the problem was by not sending him on any missions. He was still sulking when two guys from headquarters walked into the room. He turned to ask who they were, and out of nowhere, one of them jumped at him, punched him in the face, and started a full-blown beatdown. What the hell, man? The guy grabbed him by the collar, yelling for him to release the yellow dust. Maru was about to fight back, ready to do it, but then he remembered what she said. He couldn't cause problems anymore, so he didn't do anything. The wig guy ordered him to release the dust or he'd crush his skull. But then Baldy slammed a fist into Wig's head, sending him flying. Then he helped Maru up and told him to forgive the guy. He was a little ignorant. They were the double standards due from headquarters. Maru immediately asked if they were there to test him again. I'm gonna keep calling them Baldy and Wig because it's way better. Baldy said that Wig was his biggest fan. He even called Maru King Maru. Maru, embarrassed, asked what the hell that even meant. But Wig was already massaging his shoulders, saying that if he could generate yellow dust, he was more incredible than even the director. Then, a giant thumbs up right in his face. Absolute certainty that he would become the greatest ability user ever. Our boy was awkwardly flustered after hearing that. Some time passed, and soon everyone was heading home. Maru glanced to the side and saw Wooju standing there. He asked if something was wrong, and suddenly, the scene shifted to one of those meters that measure yellow dust levels. Strangely enough, it wasn't working. Wooju apologized, saying he must have done something wrong but didn't tell anyone because he didn't want to get blamed. Maru told him that this place was different. No one would mistreat him over a small mistake. Or maybe he was just awkward. The chubby guy suddenly looked flustered, asking what Maru had said. Maru just brushed it off, saying nothing, that he would definitely be treated well here. That's when he noticed the yellow dust. Wooju immediately asked if he was releasing it, but obviously he wasn't. Then, looking to the side, there was a kid with strange orbs on his chest. Wooju was already panicking, saying they needed to alert headquarters. But our boy said that with this amount of dust, it was probably just a level 1 monster. It would be easy. Then he remembered what that guy said, that he would become the best ability user. He immediately leaped at the creature, yelling that he was King Maru, and bit straight into its neck without mercy. The creature collapsed instantly. Our boy was brutal. Wooju praised him, saying he really killed it in one hit. But life was never that easy, because inside the first monster, a second one started emerging. Maru didn't understand why the thing didn't die, and now another one had spawned, and one of the orbs on its chest disappeared. Not only that, judging by the dust level, it had evolved into a level 2 demon. A while later, Maru was exhausted, completely lost as to why every time he killed it, it just got stronger. Wooju commented that the yellow dust levels had already reached a level 5 monster. He immediately ran off, saying they needed to call the rest of the team. But Maru told him, "Look behind you." The monster had already launched itself at him and was about to tear into his neck. At least, Wooju detonated his venom ability, melting the creature to nothing. But the same thing happened again. The body hardened, and from inside it, another one emerged, even stronger. This was a Hakusho evolution, and the worst part, it still had 4 stones left on its chest. It had already reached level 6, and Wooju had no idea how the 2 of them were supposed to handle this. That's when our genius boy finally realized. There were still 4 stones left. If the math was right, 6 plus 4 equals 10, which meant they were screwed. He and Wooju needed to run the hell out of there immediately. Maru said he would distract the monster while Wooju called for backup, but Wooju yelled that there was no way he could take on a level 6 monster alone. But Maru was fired up, declaring that he was King Maru and stronger than he thought. With that, he leaped at the creature, imagining that since he ate it, he should have a similar ability now. He threw a punch, but the creature dodged much faster than he expected. Then, a direct hit to his stomach. Maru crashed to the ground, completely immobilized. Before he could react, the creature slammed him with a full-on UFC-style ground and pound. Damn, Maru wasn't lasting at all. He also had those same orbs on his chest, but he didn't understand why he wasn't evolving even after taking mere fatal injuries. Apparently, his regeneration was too fast, nullifying the effects of the ability. The monster was about to crush his head, and Maru screamed, telling to hit harder. The beast went for the attack. Wuju panicked and yelled for him to be careful, but Maru just told him to stay back. But of course, the side character had to mess things up. Wuju used his venom ability. It stopped the monster's attack, but it was completely unfazed. Before he had a chance to run, the beast slammed him in the head and smashed him into the ground, the way Maru should have been crushed. But Maru, from behind, wrapped his arms around the beast and sank his teeth straight into its neck. Once again, the creature's body started hardening. Maru quickly grabbed Wuju's body, asking if he was okay. Wuju weakly asked why the bastard didn't run. Maru told him it was because this was all his fault, so obviously, he couldn't just run away. Wuju told Maru to flee and call for reinforcements. Then, he passed out. Maru already knew, if he left Wuju there with his weak recovery, he would die. Nobody was coming. That meant he had to take care of this monster alone. Only 3 more evolutions before it reached its final form. He couldn't let this thing reach level 10. He had to kill it before it emerged from the cocoon. Maru shattered the hardened armor, and inside, he saw a red creature. This was definitely part of the evolution process. He immediately lunged in to bite it, to kill the threat before it could fully develop. But then, a giant hand shot out from inside and punched a crater into Maru's chest. Damn, now this was a monster. The thing was built like a Giga Chad, but this time, it was Maru's body that started forming a cocoon. He was actually happy. Now he was finally evolving. But then, the monster grabbed him by the head and lifted him up. Maru braced himself, thinking he was about to take a punch, but instead, the beast swung him backward and launched him far away. As he was flung through the air, he saw the monster was heading straight for Wuju. He screams desperately, telling the monster to stay away. However, poor thing, he goes straight to the ground, hitting his back against the tree. At least the cocoon had been made, and at that moment, he emerges from it all covered in slime. Remembering the moment the creature was approaching, he starts running. As soon as he takes his first steps, he notices that he's much faster after evolving. However, when he gets there, there's nothing left. The yellow dust is disappearing, which means the monster is gone too. He wonders where it is when, right at that moment, his phone rings. He sees a monster alert in another district and wonders if they've already gone there. At the same time, he gets a call from Diokman, who asks if he saw the level 7 alert. He says yes, and that he has something to say, but the guy just tells him to listen and warns him not to go, but stay home. Before Maru can explain that he's already there, the guy hangs up. Our boy decides to at least try to find Wuju while the others arrive to take down the creature. That's when, from the bush beside him, he hears a phone notification. When he gets there, he finds Wuju collapse. He moves to turn the body over, asking if the guy is okay. But seeing the hand and the pool of red, it's clear that, well, he's definitely not fine. At that moment, he needed yellow dust to help the boy recover. He starts producing his own dust, pleading for Wuju not to die. However, the little hand hits the ground, and by the looks of it, the boy has passed on. That's it, the first victim has fallen, and if he was just sent to the office to die, poor guy. Maru takes off his shirt, covers his friend, and now he's definitely not happy about this. In another part of the forest, Kang was informing the leader that she was about to arrive, so where was he? Dickman was the contact in the way, but he tells her to be careful because the level was already rising to 9. He orders her not to face the creature alone and to wait for his arrival. However, the entire mountain starts shaking, to the point where even in the city, people felt it and saw the dust. The level had risen to 10, and now Kang realized that she really wouldn't be able to handle it alone. Now Dickman was worried, and Yosiak, on the other hand, was desperate, while Senwu was telling the taxi driver to speed up. Unfortunately, Juwon was stuck in the car and knew she wouldn't make it in time. Kang was running through the forest with the goal of stopping this monster before it reached the village. Suddenly, she stops and sees a figure approaching. She thinks it's the monster, but then our guy turns around. Immediately, he tells her not to come any closer and to get out of there. She's a bit confused and asks what's going on and why he's there. Maru is furious, gets right up in her face and tells her to leave before something happens. She asks him to calm down and questions what's going on, since there's no way she's just going to run away. That's when he says that the evolution demon has reached its final form. She looks over his shoulder and amid the dust, sees the creature approaching. It looks like a 6-meter-tall bodybuilder with 2% body fat. She asks if he's really fighting this level 10 monster alone, to which Maru responds that he's going to finish this by himself because he has to kill this thing. He tries to drive a stake into his own chest, but she pushes his hand away, wanting to know what he thinks he's doing. He explains that he ate the evolution monster, so if he suffers a fatal wound, he'll evolve just like it. At that moment, Kang realizes that Maru is acting strange and wonders what's happening. She asks him to calm down because the rest of the team is already arriving. However, the boy gets arrogant and says he doesn't want anyone's help. But she punches him in the chest, asking if he was really going to stab that thing into his heart without thinking about the consequences. At the rate things were going, he was going to lose his humanity. However, he just raised the stake and drove it into his chest, saying he doesn't care even if he dies. Poor Kang stood there in shock as she realized that the dust was increasing. Right next to her, she saw a pile of Maru's carcasses that had already died countless times. As she wonders how many times he has done this, the boss comes from behind, ready to throw a punch. It was too fast and her only option was to defend herself. But not today, because Chad has arrived, guys. He blocks the punch with pure swagger, grabs the monster's arm, and rips it off. The boy has gone full psycho, and the creature is terrified. However, even so, it still grabs him by the neck and slams him into the ground. The entire ground is destroyed, but Maru doesn't seem too shaken by it. The monster looks like it wants to let go of his neck, but our boy holds on and starts pulling it closer. Meanwhile, Diopman had just found Wuju's body. He wonders how this happened when, at that moment, a sound echoes through the mountain. Now Kang was starting to feel afraid, saying that this wasn't the Maru she knew. Our boy had landed a punch on the monster's face and thrown himself at it. And that's when she noticed that for the first time he had no expression on his face. In midair, as he went to throw another punch, the monster regenerated its arm and struck him in the stomach. The poor guy was sent flying, tearing through half the forest and crashing into a wall. Kang realized she would have to step in and cut her hand to activate her power. But right then, Diopman grabbed her arm and told her to stay put because she wouldn't be able to handle a level 10. They couldn't afford to lose another person. She didn't know that someone had already died, and at that moment, Diopman wanted to know why Maru was there. He clearly remembered telling him to stay home and do nothing. Meanwhile, at headquarters, Young was shouting that a level 10 monster had appeared on Gangway Island. Someone behind a chair said they had just been informed by Diopman's leader. Behind the chair was that Incredibles designer lookalike, but with white hair. She was the leader of the ancient headquarters and said she had already sent a team. If it couldn't handle it, they were to send a message to Director Zhang. That director, who was sitting there with his legs crossed, commented that this was the first level 10 in the past 2 years. Young reminded him that the last time something like this happened, the entire Surek Mountain team died along with numerous civilians. He told her to calm down because on that mountain, they had Diopman. Besides, they had the weird kid, who at that moment was rising from the rubble. He started walking again while the leader said he was losing his mind. Maru took off running even as the leader ordered him to stop. He went in for another punch at the boss, who also prepared a counterpunch. Fist against fist, and Maru's entire hand, along with his arm, was shattered. Man, once again, the monster grabbed him by the neck. Let our boy breathe. Diopman was already moving to gouge out its eyes, saying he couldn't just stand by. But Maru grabbed him by the waist and pulled a full Hunter x Hunter move on him. It was Gansen Arm 2.0 in action. With his stump in the monster's mouth, he used accelerated regeneration, and his hand reappeared on the other side of the creature's head. Even Diopman was shocked at the boy's savagery, who left a crater in the monster's skull. As soon as it hit the ground, Maru went in for his second meal, tearing a piece off. Kang believed that now no monster would be able to regenerate, so this was over. But our guy was still on top, throwing punches at its head and ripping chunks off. The leader appeared, ordering him to stop, and Kang stepped in with her sword and sliced off the head. Finally, the monster's head rolled and Maru just stood there, staring at his trembling hand. Then Kang, looking gorgeous, stepped in and hugged our emotionless Giga Chad. And only now did the rest of the group arrive, asking what had happened. Jinwo wanted to know if the leader and Kang had killed the creature. But Diopman simply said that Maru killed it alone. Some who couldn't believe that he had taken down a level 10 on his own. And our boy was just standing there in his beloved's arms, now an extra meter taller. Next scene, we're at Wuju's sad funeral. His relatives were crying while the group stood there in silence. Hyosuk, who was the closest to him, couldn't even say a word. Kang asked Diopman if he was okay, and he replied that he would never get used to this. She then wanted to know how they were going to handle this incident. He explained that, as always, Central Command would say it was a work accident. At least he wasn't devoured, so they had a body for the burial. One thing, though, was that Gangway Island was no longer considered a safe place. Kang wanted to know if Maru had sent a message, but he said no. After handing in his resignation letter, he disappeared. She said to give him some time before reaching out to headquarters, as she would find him and talk. But the leader refused, saying he had seen someone else go through this before. When he was stationed in Seoul's Central Command, his entire team was killed back then by a level 10 creature. He was the only survivor. And that was when he learned that when you experience the death of a comrade, you're never the same person again. Maru was back in the same room where it all started, lying on the bed, exhaling yellow dust. From the floor, a crater opened and a bloodied hand began to emerge. When he looked to the side, it was Zhang appearing. At first, he thought it was one of his crazy illusions. The guy said he came to have a talk with the boy and asked if he was surprised. Our boy, obviously startled, wanted to know how the crazy guy got there. To which Zhang explained that he had just killed a demon and had to come have a chat with the kid, because it seemed like he was avoiding everyone since Wuju's death. Maru was afraid of being held responsible, but Zhang just said that Kai died because he was weak. The coldness shocked our boy, but the director only said that he was worried about the kid's mental state. Why was this guy sitting on the bed? Get off, Zhang, that bed is for Kang and the protagonist. But then he told Maru that he couldn't end up like his father. Maru had no idea the guy knew about his father. That's when Zhang revealed that he and Maru's father were the first squad leaders. When the first demons started appearing, they were also the first ones to be sent. And then we go back to 1999. Zhang was already 30 years old and was shooting a creature that was calmly shielding itself from the bullets. The monster kept walking forward until Han Suwon, Maru's father, told them to keep firing. Zhang was just standing there like an idiot until his father grabbed him by the collar and ordered him to go back and lead the 6th squad. Meanwhile, another comrade was sliced in half. Han Suwon pulled out a grenade and told everyone to throw what they had. The creature was surrounded by bombs, they ducked, and half the forest was wiped out. Sometime later, smoke was rising, and they decided to check on the creature's condition. But when Han Suwon got there amid the smoke, he saw the monster still standing, with half of his body missing. The creature opened its mouth, started absorbing the dust, and began regenerating. Immediately, they ordered everyone to start shooting again before it could fully recover. However, it defended itself from the bullets, advanced, and cut everyone down. Han Suwon couldn't believe that something like this even existed. And John explained that on that day, both of their squads were completely annihilated. He woke up among all the dead soldiers with Han Suwon kneeling in the middle. He approached and asked if he was okay. But Han Suwon was just in shock, unable to understand why everyone had died, wondering what that monster was. That's when more yellow dust appeared, and he commented that this wasn't over yet. Immediately, he took off running and John followed, wanting to know why he was acting so strangely. That's when he too was terrified upon seeing a gigantic monster with about 36 eyes covering its body. He shouted that Han Suwon should run, but he turned and said that if John wanted to survive, he had to accept it. John had no idea what he meant. However, at that moment, a rift opened in front of them. A hand emerged from within and pierced Jung's chest. Back in the present, he said that the rest of the story should be obvious since Maru had gone through the same thing. When his blood mixed with the demons, he started working for the government. Maru wanted to know what happened to his father, and John explained that after everything that had happened, he tried to talk to Han Suwon about leading the organization, but he didn't want to. It seemed that the shock of absorbing those powers had destroyed a part of his mind. At that time, he only spoke about one single goal, reaching a place called the Abyss. The protagonist recalled a memory of being dragged while his father said that this was how they would reach the Abyss. And John explained that his father became a demon because he believed it was the only way to defeat them. Our boy didn't seem to believe it, but John said it was obvious since demon blood runs through the veins of everyone who uses abilities. In other words, those who possess powers could, at any moment, fall into the Abyss and become demons themselves. Sometime after that conversation, he looked at a photo of his father and wondered if he had really turned into a demon. And he remembered that John had said that if he gave up fighting the creatures, he would be no different from his father. Our boy was deep in thought, and the next day at the office, Diepman was there watching. Apparently, the kid hadn't shown up for work again. It was time to start an investigation to find him. Kang grabbed her coat and said she was heading to his place to talk to him. But that's when the boy appeared, apologizing for being late. Everyone in the office went silent while Maru thought to himself that he would stay there to investigate and uncover the truth. He refused to believe Zhang's words that his father had become a demon. At that moment, Zhang entered a room where someone was chained up, saying that the preparations were almost complete. Man, there was a massive creature restrained there, and he said that soon enough, they would see the Abyss. Back at the office, the mood wasn't great, until Juwon stood up and said it was time to go get lunch. But Maru, hidden in his corner, just replied that he wasn't hungry today and that they could go without him. As the others walked down the hallway, they commented that once again, it was just the 4 of them. Ever since the accident with Wuju, Maru had been acting stranger and stranger, and she was getting worried. Kang noticed that not just him, but everyone in the office seemed somewhat depressed. Sometime later, Diekman opened the door and called our boy, telling him to take out the trash while he prepared some ramen. Well, when he stepped outside with the garbage, he ran into Kang. He had no idea she lived there. She replied that of course she did, after all, it was close to the office, it was convenient. Actually, pretty much everyone from the office lived around there. She saw that he was carrying the trash and reached to help, and their hands touched. Was this a marriage proposal? Then she told him that he couldn't blame himself for what happened to Wuju, since everyone on the island shared the same responsibility. But he looked away and said he didn't need comfort. He knew it was his fault. However, she walked off, saying that she wasn't trying to comfort him, but rather telling him to move on, because that's how people survive in this place. Everyone on this team had already lost someone important in their life. He was confused about what she meant by that, but continued up the stairs. And there it was, another alarm. My God, these people have no peace. The leader set Yosa, Juwon, and Maru because he had a stomachache. It was just a level 6 monster, and our boy was already putting on his jacket. But then Seamwoo stood up and said that if Maru didn't want to go, he would go in his place, because apparently Maru was about to mess up again. Man, and our boy wasn't in a great mental state. He just slumped into his chair, shaken. Meanwhile, Seamwoo was getting more and more irritated with this depressed kid. Out in the mountains, Yuan told him to watch his words since Maru was struggling, but he said he wasn't going to waste time worrying about someone so broken. They just needed to find the monster and kill it quickly. Man, before he could even finish his sentence, a needle pierced his forehead, and he dropped to the ground. When he got up, confused about what had happened, he looked to the side. There was a massive red monster, and Seamwoo was down. He breaks his finger and crushes the monster's neck, which seems to die. His 2 friends stand up, asking if he really killed it, and he replies that it looks like he did. That's when Yosuk looks to the side, wondering what that thing is. There was a fat cat named Jang, and it seemed like he recognized it. He explained that it was his cat, but it made no sense for it to be there. He picked up the little creature, saying it was time to head back to the office, while wondering why it felt so much heavier today. Seung-woo told him not to bring that thing to the office, but Ji-won said to let it stay since it looked happy. Back at the base, he told everyone to take a look at what he had found in the mountains. But everyone jumped in shock and Kang immediately told him to drop it. The creature in his hands looked more like a demonic baby. It was the demon of duplication, and the moment it attacked, it sent a spike into everyone's forehead. It fell to the ground and took off running, but in Yosek's vision, it was just his little cat escaping. He ran after it down the hallway, but suddenly smacked straight into a door. Now even Diopman had been hit in the forehead. A little while later, he commented that apparently someone had the nerve to bring a mountain demon inside. Everyone turned to glare at Yosek, who quickly said it wasn't his fault. A cat looked exactly like his own. Besides, Ji-won and Seung-woo had been with him too, so the blame was on them as well. Ji-won stood up, told them to stop looking for someone to blame, and said they should focus on hunting the thing down, especially since the dust was spreading. They reached that strange door, and she mentioned that it might be an illusion, so they needed to be careful. Upon entering, they were all stunned by how massive the space inside was. Kang then told them to look ahead. There was a Rakshasa heading their way. Through the yellow dust, a gigantic monster appeared. It was the spider demon. Beneath the creature lay a dead boy. Ji-won was horrified at the sight and immediately recalled the boy hugging someone and calling them mom. At that moment, she remembered the moment he died and rushed forward. Kang grabbed her, telling her to stay put because it was dangerous. But Ji-won said that was exactly where the demon had killed her son. Kang told her to snap out of it, that this was just an illusion. That's when she remembered that the creature had attacked everyone's forehead and realized it was invading their memories to create these illusions. Maru then asked if the spider itself wasn't just another illusion. Seung-woo said maybe not, since the demon could be capable of duplicating creatures they had encountered before. The protagonist wasn't sure if something like that was even possible. That's when he recalled what Jong had said, how demon blood flowed within them carrying information, which was why they had powers. That made him wonder, if that was true, did it mean every demon they had ever faced could be duplicated here? Kang confirmed it. Both the level 10 demon that gave Diopman his powers and the gluttony demon that had granted Maru his own. The problem was, if the creature could duplicate all of that, how could they possibly stop something like this? For Maru, the biggest issue was the gluttony demon. It was the one that had created his trauma. He collapsed to the ground, terrified that the monster would appear and kill everyone. But Diopman reassured him, telling him not to worry. No one was going to die. The group advanced toward the creature and Kang went in for the attack, saying they just needed to protect each other. At the same time, Seung-woo broke a finger while Kang slashed the demon's neck. The creature pulled out, and the two stood there in complete swagger after taking it down. But just then, another door materialized. A second later, they found themselves in a different place. It seemed to be part of the duplicator's power. Kang asked Ji-won if she was okay, and she replied that she was fine and had already recovered. Maru stood there thinking. Ji-won had already experienced seeing her son die in front of her. Seung-woo then said they needed to hurry up and find the next door to escape this nightmare. The floor was littered with corpses. Maru noticed mold growing along the walls and immediately realized they were inside Kim Yi-bak's memories. The man himself was there crying out for his wife. He remembered the moments he had spent with her and also how they had both died in the mold. Man, this was tragic. Seung-woo pointed upward, telling them to look at the ceiling. There was a massive red creature covered in moss on its back. Spores began falling and Maru accidentally inhaled one. Immediately, he vomited and checked on the rest of the group. Unfortunately, they were all already down. He realized he might be the only one still standing due to his rapid regeneration. He started tearing off the spores, telling himself he had to handle this alone. He leaped forward and bit straight into the monster, tearing off a chunk. Honestly, I was terrified that this was all an illusion and that he had just bitten a teammate instead. Phew, that wasn't the case. Everyone started waking up. Yosek celebrated, saying he thought he was dead. Kang glanced to the side where Kim Yi-bak stood with his wife. Now it all made sense, how she had died and the origin of his powers. Maru remembered Kang saying that everyone at the office had lost someone important. He wasn't the only one who had been through hardship, so he couldn't let it break him. He decided it was time to move on and brushed past Seung-woo, who immediately shoved him back and walked ahead, telling him not to get in his way. Seung-woo had already gone to open the door, but Maru warned him to be careful. Nobody knew what would be on the other side. But Seung-woo just scoffed, saying he didn't care. Whatever appeared, they would just kill it and keep moving forward. Then we saw someone standing in front of the gate. Maru squinted, trying to figure out who it was. It was Seung-woo himself. Maru smirked, saying that judging by that annoyingly smug face, it had to be his memory version. From within the gate, the temple demon emerged. Man, Seung-woo didn't run away. He went straight to the demon and asked for an ability. He wanted power stronger than his father's. Maru was shocked to see this lunatic talking directly to the demon and asking for an ability. Seung-woo explained that it was the only way he could go against his father. The creature snapped his own finger and shattered his leg. As it moved in to land a punch, Seung-woo declared that no one would ever see this side of him. He started breaking his own fingers to try and take down the boss, told it to die, but unfortunately, Unlike him, the boss had 78 fingers to break. Its entire arm twisted unnaturally, and Xianwu felt every bit of it collapsing to the ground. Maru realized he would have to handle this in charge of the monster alongside Kang. Juwon and Diakman were already prepared to unleash their powers. That's when countless arms sprouted from the creature's body, and they all knew they were in serious trouble. Every finger on its body started breaking, and along with them, their own spines. Lying on the ground in agony, Maru realized that the temple demon was far stronger than he had thought. As always, Maru was the first to recover thanks to his rapid regeneration. The problem was he couldn't understand why Xianwu wasn't doing anything. He shouted at him to get up. He had the same ability as the creature, so he should be doing something. The poor guy was lying there, face down on the pavement, wondering how Maru had the nerve to say that to him. He wanted to be stronger than his father. That's why he had asked for an extremely high-level ability. But there he was, humiliating himself again, losing once more to this kid. If he couldn't even handle this, then what was the point of having ability at all? The demon raised its arm, creating even more hands. Maru knew it was going to target him next since he was the only one still standing. The fingers cracked and the pain was unbearable. So many bones twisted that even his regeneration ability was starting to fail. He collapsed to the ground, completely immobilized, while the demon calmly walked past him. Desperate, he told Diakman to do something. Diakman explained that he needed to rip out the demon's eye, but at that moment, his body wouldn't move. Maru felt completely hopeless. His leader was useless. Everyone was shouting at Sunwoo to do something, since he was the only one who actually understood this power. As the demon approached the 3 remaining team members, its arms expanded, growing a mass of fingers. And that's when Xianwu realized he had to act. He broke one of his own teeth to destroy the monster's arm, the one that had just spawned the fingers. Kang seized the moment of distraction, got up, and launched herself at the creature, slicing off another arm. The problem was, not only was she weak, but the demon's entire body was covered in bone, so her blade just got stuck. Suddenly, something grabbed her neck and lifted her into the air. She had no idea what was happening, and Maru wondered why she was floating. Xianwu was the only one who understood. From the blood that had dripped from the temple demon's arm, countless hands had formed, grabbing her and holding her aloft. And worse, every part of her that was caught was now being twisted. Immediately, Maru got up and rushed toward the creature, yelling at it to stop, but then a hand grabbed him by the neck. It lifted him into the air. He couldn't see or do anything. At that moment, Xianwu knew if he had received this demon's power, then he should also be able to use it. He bit into his own arm, letting the blood drip to the ground, and then hands began to form, grabbing hold of the monster and pulling it down. In the second that the creature was immobilized, something came out of nowhere and struck it right in the neck. It was Juwon's spider, and with that, she declared that it looked like they had won. The entire team was beyond exhausted. Sometime later, Xianwu was leaning against a wall, but at least he was happy he had learned something new about his ability. Someone called out to him. It was Maru, saying it was good he had learned so well. Next time, he wanted to see that ability being put to proper use. Xianwu told that damned monster biter to shut up. He walked off, leaving Maru annoyed. He had just been trying to give some advice. After resting, they proceeded to the next door. As soon as they approached, everyone felt something strange. A sound echoed, and Xianwu asked what was inside. Since no one seemed to recognize it, Kang guessed that it might be Maru's ability. He stepped forward, curious about what he would find. Upon opening the door, someone was calling out for their father. It was him, hiding in front of a gigantic creature. Everyone was startled to see that this demon had eyes. Maru was begging to be freed, struggling as he was dragged along, but his father only told him that this was the path to the abyss. If he wanted to protect the people he cared about, he had to obtain the power of the gluttony demon. Hearing this talk about protecting others, Maru realized it didn't make sense, considering what Zhang had said. He remembered that Zhang had claimed his father had abandoned his humanity. It seemed like Director Zhang had lied to him. At headquarters, someone slammed a hand on the table, saying it was much less than expected. It was the old lady from The Incredibles, saying that they had far fewer ability users now, yet the number of demons kept increasing. Zhang replied that quality was more important than quantity, but she countered that the number of level 7 ability users was particularly low, especially in the ancient region. She asked what his plan was, whether he was deliberately trying to force stronger individuals to emerge. Zhang simply stated that, if necessary, that was exactly what he was doing. The old woman slammed the table, saying that the real madness was letting a bunch of civilians die just so a few could turn into ability users. As the director of this place, he should know how dangerous those words were. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. A young woman entered, informing him that the materials he had requested would be delayed because they had lost contact with Gangwei Island. Immediately, the old woman ordered them to find out if those bastards were just leaving work early. Meanwhile, the group stood face to face with the gluttony demon, which roared at them. At that moment, all they wanted was to go home. That's when Yoseok suddenly pointed and told everyone to look at that. Strangely, the gluttony monster was already melting. Within seconds, the creature sank into the ground and vanished. Jiwon found it odd. Why had the monster disappeared without even attacking? Diakman then commented that this demon seemed different from any other they had encountered before. Everyone was relieved at least that they didn't have to fight that thing. That's when a voice called out for sister. Right away, they knew it was Kang's turn. She stepped forward and told them to wait. She would go alone. Obviously, Maru warned her that it was too risky, but she replied that she wanted to prepare herself now for when she faced the real one. They could stay put. She would be back. Man, they actually stayed. I wouldn't have done that. Maru was certain that it would be really difficult for her to win, especially since Xianwu had struggled so much against the temple demon. He decided to take just a quick look at what was happening. Kang was locked in battle with the red monster. The strange thing was that another demon was watching the fight. Once again, it was one of those with eyes. Not to mention, just like the gluttony demon, it was starting to dissolve. Right at that moment, Kang's sword shattered, and the monster moved in to finish her. Maru shouted for her to be careful, but she insisted that she had already said she would handle it alone. However, he told her to pay attention. The creature had some kind of defensive ability, and if that was the case, then she should have that power too. She stood there thinking about it as the door shut. Xiangwu said that was enough. Now she was going to win. He still wanted to help, but he had no choice, and they all just had to wait. Sometime later, the door opened and a bloodied hand reached through. No tears needed tonight. She emerged, beautiful and alive. She stumbled forward and collapsed into Maru's arms, who was completely messed up himself. Xiangwu was frustrated. He had needed help, while she had defeated the demon that had given her power all on her own. Joan then said that now only Yosaku's and the leader's creatures remained. TikTok Dude confirmed but questioned why the door hadn't appeared yet. Xiangwu mentioned that the creature they encountered in the forest had abilities similar to Yosaku's. Yosef agreed. It made sense since the first time he encountered the demon, he had also been searching for his cat, which meant that at this moment only the leader's demon was left. There he was scratching his belly, wondering why he had been forgotten at such a moment. Everyone was starting to notice that this damn leader wasn't taking things seriously. His demon was level 10. Yosef brought it up, saying that apparently they had gotten lucky. Diakman said he was really happy because with this, everyone was much safer. Maru celebrated. Maybe this was actually the best possible outcome. Everyone seemed calm, the yellow dust was settling, and the creature had disappeared. The leader then said that it looked like Kang had handled her issue quickly. It would be a good idea to take her to the hospital and then go eat some Korean barbecue. Right then, Maru punched him square in the face. Everyone was stunned as Maru grabbed him by the collar and accused him of being the demon. Jiwan told him to stop hitting the leader, saying he had lost his mind. But Maru pointed out that the leader had eaten Korean barbecue yesterday and ended up with a stomachache. There was no way he'd want to eat it again today. For a second, everyone stood in shock, and the leader looked confused about why they were talking about his stomach. The next second, he was getting stomped on. Everyone agreed that this was enough reason. The leader yelled for them to stop. They were all losing their minds. He got up and bolted out of there. The moment he made outside the building, the real Diakman ran him over. The group was shocked, and the leader asked what the hell he had just hit. The dust settled, and the red devil emerged once more. Sometime later, during the meeting, the leader realized that, apparently, while he was stuck in the hospital with a stomachache, they had brought a demon inside. He warned them that if headquarters found out about this, everyone's salary would be cut for an entire year. For that reason, the entire incident needed to be kept secret. Outside, Kang just wanted to go home. She was exhausted. That's when someone called out to her. She thought it would be Maru, but no, it was Xianwu, saying he wanted to talk about something. He then revealed that the demon from her memories, the one she had just fought, he had seen it before. She asked where and when, and damn, Xianwu said that demon was Director John. The guy already knew the whole truth. His IQ was on another level, a solid 200. The scene then shifted to 20 years ago. He entered his mother's room, asking where his father was and if he was working in the basement again. She replied that yes, he was, saying that he didn't care about either of them, so the boys shouldn't care about him either. Shamu went outside to the basement window, wiped away the dust, and inside. What he saw was exactly what you'd imagine. His father was in the middle of transforming into a demon. Back in the present, Kang couldn't believe it. Xiaomu said that when he went to check the basement where his father was, he only saw the demon, so he hadn't been sure at the time. But as time passed and now seeing this memory, he was convinced. Kang wanted to know if the director was really a demon or why he had just stood there watching her family die. Xiaomu explained that that was exactly what he wanted to find out. He had gotten involved in all of this just to uncover Zhang's true identity. If he became strong enough and worked at headquarters, he would get closer to discovering the truth. Kang told him that a childhood memory alone wasn't enough to prove anything. He needed something more concrete. He replied that he already had a very good idea of how to prove it, but he needed something first. She asked what? Next scene. At headquarters, Kang and Maru were there. Maru wanted to know why he was even there, and she told him she had explained it 1,000 times already. He pointed at Xianwu, saying they shouldn't be there just because of that lunatic's ridiculous conspiracy theory. After a moment of silence in the room, Zhang entered, apologizing for making them wait. He sat down and asked what the three of them had come to discuss. Maru felt awkward, but Xianwu got straight to the point. He said he knew the director had been present when Kang received her abilities. Maru was shocked, and the director replied that he didn't quite understand what they were talking about and needed a clearer explanation. Kang then stated that the demon present that day had eyes, and she had heard that this demon was the director. Man, I didn't expect their plan was to just straight up confront the guy like this. Zhang put his hand over his face and said that, apparently, they had been misled by Sunwoo's absurd theories. First, the boy had wanted to blame his father for his mother's death, and now he was accusing him of being a demon. Up until now, Maru didn't even know they were father and son. Xiangwu slammed the table, saying this had nothing to do with his mother. He just wanted to know Zhang's true identity. He then looked at Maru and ordered him to use the yellow dust to expose the director's identity. But Zhang warned that if he used that power unnecessarily, he would lose all protection from Gangwei Island. Maru hesitated for a second, and then Kang told Sunwoo that it would be better to drop this. She also wanted to uncover the truth behind her family's death, but putting Maru in this situation wasn't the right way. Hearing that, Maru remembered when they had been at her old house, and he asked if this would help her find that truth. He recalled the memory of the demon killing her brother. Then he stood up and said that if that was the case, then Xiangwu would have to take full responsibility for this. Yellow dust started spreading, and he declared that it was obvious. The director stood up and asked why he had to do something like this to his own son. But Xiangwu, of course, replied that he had never even considered him a father. He immediately started breaking his fingers, saying that Zhang was just someone who had abandoned him and his mother. Zhang stood still as the glass behind him shattered. Xiangwu lunged forward and slammed his shoulder into Zhang's chest, sending him tumbling out of the building. As he fell, Maru shouted that this was madness. There was no dust to help him survive. But Zhang just told them to wait. They would see the truth. As he plummeted, the director thought to himself that these kids were really starting to get on his nerves. That's when they felt something. Turning around, he saw a portal opening, and of course the director stepped out of it, releasing dust from his mouth. That proved Xiangwu was right. Yu Young entered the room demanding to know what was going on. Then she saw the dust. The moment she realized she was looking at the director, she told him to explain himself. Kang immediately called out to Yu Young, saying that Director Zhang was involved in her family's death. Zhang then asked if, besides these three, anyone else from the island suspected him. No one answered. He just smirked and said that their silence told him everything. Then he activated his spatial power and slammed his hand onto the ground. In an instant, everyone seemed to be teleported. One moment, they were in the office. The next, they were in an isolated building in some unknown location. Zhang stood there and Yu Young demanded an explanation, wanting to know what he was doing. He said that since they had started questioning him, he had no choice. Besides, he couldn't just stain the entire office with blood and organs. Then, he activated his spatial power and sent an attack straight at them. Yu Young immediately shouted a warning about his ability, and everyone managed to duck. Looking back, Maru saw that everything the attack had touched had been completely erased. Yu Young then asked Zhang what he was doing, if he had lost his mind. But he simply replied that he was cutting off the rotten parts. The kids had seen too much. It was just a shame that she, the bald guy, and Wigman had gotten caught up in this too. They all would have made great weapons against the Abyss. But at the same time, getting rid of Maru was actually a good thing. Dealing with the Abyss was a massive headache. Maru asked why he was being accused of being on the Abyss's side. Zhang started preparing another spatial attack, saying that it was because humans were too weak. His hand suddenly appeared behind them, and as Kang turned to look, two heads were sliced off instantly. Maru was shocked, but suddenly Yum grabbed her own chest. She held onto her heart for 5 seconds, and with that, she activated the power of Eternal Pause. Yu Young had the Rakshasa of Time, which allowed her to sacrifice 5 years of her life to rewind 5 seconds. With that, they were back to the moment when Zhang was preparing his attack. He stared at them and said that it looked like he had already done this before, since Yu Young had just saved everyone. The blood on her chest made it obvious. But Maru asked how the two of them were still alive when he had just seen them get killed. She found that strange. Other than the director, no one else should have been able to sense her ability. That's when Baldy and Wigman charged forward, saying they didn't have time for this. The two of them went in for a coordinated attack, but Zhang disappeared into thin air and reappeared right behind them. He walked up to Xiangwu and asked if his father had really tried to kill him. Xiangwu snapped one of his fingers, and the director's entire arm was affected. He glared at the man and said that he had done it because he wasn't his father. Zhang prepared another spatial attack, but Maru and Kang barely managed to throw him to the ground. He warned them to be careful, otherwise, they'd die again. Strangely, Yu Young was telling them to capture him alive because they had too many questions. Baldy and Wigman replied that they weren't sure if that was possible. They clasped their hands together, and when they released them, their blood seemed to be linked. They warned that they were about to go all in. Wigman charged in first, boasting that he was the fastest. Because of his blood ability, he had double the attack speed. But Zhang just prepped a single slash and took his head off. Everyone knew the poor guy didn't stand a chance. But even without his head, Wigman still managed to land a punch on Zhang's face, and his severed head, spinning through the air, was smiling, saying that they would win. As expected, Baldy then revealed the secret of their ability, for no apparent reason. He explained that as long as their blood pact connected them, they wouldn't die. Zhang sent a spatial slash at them, but their blood bond reformed immediately. Now that made sense why he had explained it. The final mercy pact couldn't be severed. Wigman, lying on the ground, thanked the director for everything he had done. But, unfortunately, today was the day to say goodbye. Maru was impressed by the duo's strength, but Xianwu quickly warned that Zhang was dodging everything with ease. That's when Kang told them to look closely at what was happening. After dodging for so long, Jung had gotten himself caught in the blood ties. Of course, Baldy and Wigman started pulling, saying that this was the end. Jung was being stretched and pulled from both sides. Yugam ordered them to finish it and Kang slashed his arm. At the same time, Sanwoo broke the other one. They were excited. Apparently, they had finally won as Jung could no longer activate his powers. The problem was, he had started absorbing yellow dust to regenerate. Immediately, the leader ordered Maru to bite him and stop the regeneration. Our boy took off running, shouting that he had never bitten a human before. But right in the middle of his charge, Jung's expression changed. He smirked. Maru was horrified as he watched the man transform. As everyone feared, he had turned into the same creature from Kang's dream. The punch he traded with Maru unleashed a wave of spatial energy. Our boy tried to defend himself, but he started getting absorbed into the darkness. The energy was drawn into Jung's hand, and before everyone's eyes, Maru vanished into the black void. The transformed monster just stood there, grinning like a lunatic. Meanwhile, Yu Young was still trying to process what was happening. Jung sighed and apologized, saying he hadn't wanted to reveal his true nature. At that moment, Seungwoo knew. This thing wasn't his father. So what had happened to the real one? The demon put a hand on its face and muttered that he couldn't believe he had to kill the very soldiers he had created. Obviously, Kang understood exactly what he meant by that, and she refused to believe it. But he confirmed it. He was the one who had summoned the demons to her house. He had seen her natural aptitude for sports and immediately realized that she would become an exceptional ability user. Of course, Kang lunged at him in rage, but the leader yelled for her to stop. Too late. She had already swung her blade. The demon stretched out its hand, and her body began to disintegrate. Man, she was erased from existence with a single spatial slap. At the same time, Yudam lost an arm, and everyone else was annihilated. With no choice, the leader once again gripped her own heart and rewound time by 5 seconds. This time, she grabbed Kang's shoulder and warned her not to move, otherwise, everyone would die. But Kang was desperate, demanding to know what they were supposed to do. Young admitted that she had no idea. Ever since Jung transformed, he had gained monstrous strength. At this point, none of them stood a chance. They couldn't even approach him. Kang said that if they still had Maru, they might have a chance. So how could they bring him back? But the leader responded that it was impossible. No one had ever returned from the darkness that Jung created. Our boy, meanwhile, was running through the void, stumbling like an idiot. He had run until he was completely out of breath, but still he found no light anywhere. That's when he collapsed to the ground and, looking ahead, thought he saw an exit. Of course, he immediately got up and ran toward it, desperate to see what it was. But within that light, he came face to face with Jung himself. The man looked thin and malnourished, staring at him in disbelief. He asked, "How did a human end up here?" Innocently, Maru replied that he had gotten trapped while fighting someone who looked exactly like him. And now he wanted to know, what was this place? That's when Jung explained that the thing he had fought was one of the demons that escaped from the abyss. Maru was terrified, because not only did this creature have eyes, it could speak like a normal person. That's when the real Jung revealed. That thing was one of the 8 gods. Beings that existed above ordinary demons. They were the beings who had received the powers of the Supreme King of the Abyss. Unlike other demons, who are purely driven by instinct and kill anything without purpose, the 8 gods can make their own decisions and act of their own free will. At that moment, the monster was unleashing another spatial slash while Kang was telling everyone to protect the leader since they would all die if she did. With that, both Kang and the bald guy were sliced in half. Damn, that leader is losing too many years of her life. She clutches her own heart once again and rewinds 5 seconds. The heads are reattaching to their bodies again, while the illusionary Jung says that those from the Supreme Realm are extremely powerful. No ability user should ever fight against one of these gods because they have no chance of winning. At that moment, the guy tells the leader that she has already turned back time countless times, so why doesn't she just give up? Meanwhile, Yu Young is wondering when exactly she started following that monster's orders. The guy smirks and says she is very persistent. He raises his arms, creating a bunch of demon portals, saying that now things are going to get interesting. Creatures start raining down, and everyone there knows that the fight just got even more complicated. They huddle together in this center for protection, while at the same time, Maru wants to know what the purpose of these creatures is. If the 8 gods are also demons, why do they kill demons? Jung explains that the creature that took his body escaped from the abyss and became an enemy of the Supreme King. Now is trying to turn humans into a weapon to destroy the abyss. Maru wonders if this whole civil servant thing is just a manipulation by the space demon. He questions whether killing that bastard might actually put an end to the war. However, Jung replies that it is already too late because the war with the abyss has already begun. Our boy thinks deeply and says that if that demon dies, he will take control of his body again. He grabs Jung's arm, saying they're going to get out of there. But Jung says it's impossible because his consciousness is trapped in that place. Maru, getting sentimental, tells him that his son is waiting for him outside. Jung is surprised by this and asks why he's bringing up his son at a time like this. A 5-year-old boy in kindergarten wouldn't be there. Obviously, Maru is shocked by this information, and Jung just says that talking like this is extremely exhausting. He's going back to rest with his son and wife. Maru tries to pull him, saying he needs to get out of there now because there's a way for both of them to escape. But the director lowers his head again and says that it is impossible to leave that place. Back at the abandoned building, the group is fighting against the monsters that are pouring in. The space demon says this is the perfect chance to get rid of both enemies at once. Then the spatial slash cuts through both the demons and heads straight for the whole group. The energy expands sideways and they join hands, sending a slash at the entire group. It wasn't just any slash, it was space itself shrinking around them. The group knew that this was the end, until a hand started emerging from a portal. It was Maru, who had returned from the devil's hell. The monster was startled and Kang was incredibly impressed. He came out screaming that the escape worked, and he clenched his fist, saying that now it was time for payback. Then we see a few minutes earlier, right when Zhang said it was impossible to escape from that place. Our boy insisted, saying of course not, that he had to find a way out of there. That's when the demon put its little hand on his arm and tried to take a bite, but Maru punched it in the face before the creature could do anything and it dissolved into dust. He was confused, not understanding why a demon appeared there. Then he remembered a conversation he had with Yoseok. He was worried because a gate had seemingly stayed open for 3 days. That's when Yoseok explained that this had happened in the city of Busan. They were lucky that the director went there and closed the gate by throwing air into space. The director really was an incredible guy. That's when Maru got the idea to find the gate in the middle of this void. After walking for a while, he found the so-called door. He approached it, feeling unsure about what was beyond that place. But it was definitely better than staying trapped there until he died, so he went through. Except when he came out, he was in a completely different place. Maru stood still for a second, and right away he felt the concentration of yellow dust was so intense that he was losing consciousness. That's when someone told him to hold on. In the distance, there was that strange figure of a woman with long hair and green eyes. She stared at him, and then all the monsters turned toward her. At that moment, the whole ground started shaking, and Maru wondered what that sound was. Right in front of him, an entire army from hell was approaching. No way was he going to fight all that, so he immediately started running. The problem was that he had no idea where he was going. Then, in the middle of his escape, he saw another one of those gates and decided to go for it. He jumped through as all the monsters were coming at him, and that's when he suddenly appeared behind the big space monster. The fool turned around, surprised, while our boy went for a punch. Damn, but even then, the bastard teleported to dodge the punch. Come on, let the boy have his moment. The monster was not happy about this, while Yu Young was impressed that he had escaped. Our boy smiled, asked if everyone was okay, and said that from now on, he was going to handle this. Xiaomu told him to stop being an idiot since he couldn't even get close to the space demon. But at that moment, Maru wasn't so sure about that. In fact, he was certain that his current self could win. That's when the demon asked how he had escaped from the black space. Suddenly, he felt something on his back. A green energy emerged from the portal and struck him directly. Right then, the King of Hell shouted it, saying that he had finally found him. The space demon's arms seemed to be getting pulled, and with that, both his soul and the real John appeared to be separating. The creature was trying to close all the gates to avoid being taken. At that moment, Yvonne commented that the monsters were returning, so it seemed like the director was trying to seal everything. He kept struggling to do so while the king stared at him from the gate. In an instant, it seemed like everything was over. But the truth was that the space demon had realized something. A good portion of the power the King of Hell had given him had now been taken back. He clenched his fist in anger and stretched his hand toward Maru, saying it was all his fault. Our protagonist stood still while the spatial slash came toward him, and everyone was screaming for him to dodge it. The boy's head was cut off, and Yu Young was already about to clutch her heart again. But suddenly, Kang grabbed her hand and told her to look at that. Maru had activated the evolution ability. His body broke out from within the cocoon, and he dashed toward the demon. The creature, however, just sent another slash without worry. But Maru wasn't too worried either, though Yu Young, on the other hand, was a bit shaken. The demon kept sending slashes. Maru was being sliced apart, while Baldy and Wig Guy were standing there wondering if the boy was even human. Meanwhile, the old man knew this was the end for him. Maru had already left. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, meaning now there were 10 of them, folks. He lunged at the creature, saying this was the end, but even then, the space demon unleashed one last attack, telling him to die. However, Maru crouched, dodging the final slash, and said, "Not today." He slipped to the side, bit the creature's neck, and said, "I'm taking this ability for myself." He was hanging there, lashed onto the monster. Kang was sure that this was the end. Or maybe not. Maru's bite hadn't done any damage at all. He seemed strangely shaken, and it looked like his gluttony worked differently this time. Once again, he found himself in the void. The space demon appeared and warned that he was going to regret this. He would definitely wish he hadn't consumed him. The gluttony demon could devour his ability, and that's why he was sure that the boy had been sent by the Abyss to strip away his powers. That's why he wanted to know how long the boy would allow himself to be controlled by the Abyss. He must be wanting to return to that prison where war and darkness are eternal. Obviously, Maru responded that this made no sense and that of course he didn't want something like that. But the demon grabbed him by the neck and said he wasn't talking to him. He was speaking to the gluttony demon inside the boy's body. He wanted to know how the demon was so useless that it hadn't taken control of a human's body, even though it was part of the original 8 gods. The demon walked forward and stared him down. Not only was Maru having to resist the space attack, but he was also starting to feel the gluttony demon trying to take control of his body. He kept resisting, but the other guy said it was pointless. Every human who possessed the power of the 8 gods eventually lost their consciousness, so he might as well join them and go against the abyss. He told the gluttony demon to give up its fight with the humans. It could be free, and together they could destroy the abyss. All they needed to do was combine their forces and use ability users as pawns. Amid countless memories, Maru began to open a sinister mouth with multiple smaller mouths forming around his body. He shouted that he wasn't undoing the transformation and that he wouldn't let this happen. No way was he going to allow anyone to use humans like that. That's why he wouldn't let this monster take control of his body. He was going to devour the space demon and put an end to this himself. He lunged for another bite, and then we were back in the abandoned building. Except this time, Maru tore a chunk off. He swallowed it immediately while the guy said it was foolishness. He was about to say something about how it would be impossible without him, when blood gushed upward and both of them collapsed to the ground. The gorgeous Kang rushed in to save our boy. Meanwhile, Sanwoo just stood there, watching as the body reverted. He grabbed his coat and placed it over the body. It looked like the old man wasn't coming back from the world of consciousness. Unfortunately, he had really died. Wig Guy and Baldy looked to the side, wondering if it was finally over. It seemed that King Maru had won once again. Meanwhile, Yudong looked at Jung's body and wondered what would happen next. How would the special public servants group function now? Sometime later, back at the dormitory, everyone was at their place, and Diepman commented that he would have never believed their leader was one of the 8 demons. He had always thought the director was a weird guy, but never imagined he was a demon. Everyone was talking about how the room reeked of beer until Young called out to Diekman. Actually, she calls him Sunbae, which is a more respectful term. She mentions that she was thinking about calling an emergency meeting, but decided to consult him first. Then she asks what they should do. Diekman replies that as soon as the announcement is made, it will cause mass panic and the government won't stay quiet. She knows that news like this could collapse the entire organization. For now, they need to keep everything a secret until they find a solution. And obviously, they have to make sure no information leaks to anyone else. Sometime later, Young is leaving with the dynamic duo, telling him to get some rest. At that moment, Diekman calls out to her and, judging by his face, tells her that she worked hard. She doesn't need to call him Sunbae anymore. The others say that Diekman is such a bastard, basically saying that the woman is old as hell now. Night falls and Maru is sleeping in the living room. He asks why the hell that guy is there instead of going to his own house. Samu replies that he doesn't have the energy to go back. It would be best if the kid went to his room already because he can't stand someone sleeping next to him. Maru explains that his room is actually just a storage space. He usually sleeps on that couch right there. Then once again, he calls out to Sunwoo and says he has something to talk about. He had managed to talk to his father. Sunwoo immediately sits up. Maru then explains that it seems his father had been trapped in that black space all along. He tried to get him out of there, but it wasn't possible. And that's why he wanted to apologize. Sunwoo pauses for a second. His face hardens and he turns away, saying it's fine. But Maru reveals that his father missed him and his mother a lot. Then he asks him not to hate him anymore. Sunwoo lets a single tear fall. With that, our boy lies down, wondering what will happen next. He remembers that before dying, the demon said that soon one of the 8 gods of the abyss would find them. From now on, they would have to face the abyss without his help, which meant the end of humanity. Maru feels uncertain about how they're supposed to defeat these gods of hell, considering they're stronger than any demon they faced. Then the voice of the god of hell commands the one who possesses his ability to step forward. A knight who looks like Maru's father appears, and she says that finally it's time to like this video that helps Mamoru make more juicy content for his viewers, activate the cheeky little bell, and I'm out.